Yeah, we're live.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, as you are now all aware, there is a need for you to keep your video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep your microphone muted except when I invite you to speak. As usual, please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment. There is always a risk, and it's just happened to me. If there is a technical problem, I'd ask for your patience. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast is paused. If it's not possible to address the fault, the meeting will be abandoned and reconvened at a suitable time in the future. Can I please remind members and officers and the public speakers that this is a virtual meeting, will be recorded, and these recordings will be public on the Council's website. Members, I'd like to begin by doing a roll call of members. I'll go alphabetical to establish your presence. So, Councillor Connor.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Fuller.
Present.
Councillor Giles.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Howell.
Present, Chairman.
Councillor Hartford.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor King.
Present, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Manning.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Present, Chair.
And myself, Councillor Bates. Thank you. So if we then actually to move please to the agenda, which is published on the website, and the first item is apologies for absence and any declarations of independence, any declaration of interest. Independent as well, maybe. Okay, so Daniel, I believe we don't have any apologies, so we have a full house. Thank you.
That's correct.
Are there any declarations, members? I see no hands being raised. So if during the meeting there is, please make that aware of that indeed. So if we'd like to move to item 2, which is the minutes of the Highways Committee held on the 19th of January. Can I assume that those are a record? Does any member wish to raise anything in relationship to the minutes? I see no hands raised, so we'll take that as unanimous in support of those minutes. Can I then move to the minutes of the action log, which are on page 15 to 20? Can these be noted? Are there any items for discussion? Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I just wondered if we could have an update on the Wisbech cycle map that we've been that's been hanging around for a long time.
Okay.
Chairman, through you, I'll pick that up if that's okay. Yeah, Councillor King, I have had a couple of conversations with the team. As I think you're aware, the issue is identifying the funding. I know the team have spoken to the individual who did the artwork last time, who was a local person. And I believe they've extracted the original artwork, but it's a matter of identifying some funding. So, Councillor King, I did go through these actions a week or so ago. I will double check with the team, and I can update you and other members of the committee.
Okay, can we set a date for when that can be done, please?
I would really appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. We are obviously coming to the end of this council, and we're talking about a tiny amount of money in the great scheme of things, and I just find it extraordinary that we can't identify a very small amount of money just to get this done.
Can we please action this and have an answer back to Simon King and the rest of the committee by
Chairman, if you leave it with me, I'll get back to committee in the next. I'll aim for the next week and see if we can, as Councillor King says, find some money. So I'll, through you, Chairman, I'll do that.
Okay, so noted 1 week, and then we will have something coming back to Councillor King and the rest of the members. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
Ian Manning, Councillor Manning.
Thanks, Chair. Could we just have an update on item 24, which was Councillor Dupre's request to be considered being on the HGV steering group by the outside bodies appointments process?
Yes, and I think that was an action for me from memory. Okay, you're smiling, so it must be. I did talk to the chairman, Councillor Criswell. His view at the time was, but bearing in mind that I think, as Councillor King has just said, we're coming to the end, he felt it would perhaps be better left until after the elections, because things will be changing naturally, as we all know. So his view was, I think it's best left until everything is settled down after the election.
Yeah.
So if you'd be kind enough, Ian, please, to convey that message to Councillor Dupre, I'm sure it will get recorded in the minutes as well. But thank you.
Thank you,
Can I just remind you to take your hands down, please, as well as put them up. Thank you. Okay. Any other thing, please?
Yes, Chairman. I'm having trouble getting onto the link, but
Okay.
I think I finally sorted it out. I just want to clarify whether I've received an email from a Daniel Fulton, and it refers to the agenda item on the 9th of March. I checked through the agenda. Will this actually be on there at all? I think you received it as well. It was on the 21st of February. It's quite a lengthy email.
Sorry, Councillor Giles. I'm really only dealing with the minutes of the action log, and that's not an action log minutes.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so
When can I bring this up?
well, I suggest you bring it up at the end of the meeting, perhaps later on, so that we can be appraised of that. So I'm happy to take that offline, I think, Derek. Okay.
Well, I've been trying to get to the bottom of this, and it does say it's going to be on the agenda on the 9th of March. And as I say, I looked through the agenda and I couldn't find it. I'm just wondering where it is.
This is the 9th of March.
Yeah, I know it is.
Graham or Daniel, can you help at all, please? This is not.
Chairman, is this? I suspect this may be in relation to Mill Road. I think Daniel Fulton is Hughes Lane Consortium.
Yes.
So I suspect it's in relation to that series of correspondence that a number of members have received. So it is that item. It's Councillor Giles. It's been moved to June.
Sorry.
Yes, I can assist now. I think, Derek. Okay. Apologies for being a bit vague. It's not. It is related to Mill Road. It is not on today's agenda. That particular item has been moved forward to next after the elections in June. So that cannot be dealt with today because it is not on the agenda. Okay, I'm happy. I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Well, it's either on the agenda or it's not, and it's not on the agenda because it's moved back. So I'm happy. Can I suggest that Graham Hughes, you give Councillor Giles a ring and bring him perhaps to complete the picture, please?
Yes, I'll do that, certainly. Thank you.
If you could, please. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions on minutes action log? See no other hands. Thank you. If I move on then to petitions and public questions, we have got some today, but they're all related to particular items on the agenda, and they will be dealt with at that particular moment on the agenda. So if we could perhaps move on, please, to item 5, which is on page 21 to 26, and I believe that Emma Murden is going to introduce this. So Emma, could you please introduce the report as circulated to members, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Today's report is to outline to the committee the forthcoming novation of the County Council's Highway Services contract from Skanska UK Limited to Milestone Infrastructure Limited, which is part of the M Group Services Company. So as part of background, in July 2017, Cambridgeshire County Council entered a long-term contract with Skanska UK Limited for highway services. Then in early 2020, we were notified that Skanska intended, following a strategic review, to divest themselves of Skanska Infrastructure Services, which is the element of the overall Skanska UK Limited, which delivers our contract for highways. Then, as part of that, on the 4th of December 2020, M Group Services announced they had exchanged contracts to purchase Skanska UK Infrastructure Services operation. As part of that, to enable Skanska to actually novate the contract under those current existing terms that we have, there's a contract requirement that they actually require prior written approval from the employer, which is in this instance Cambridgeshire County Council. So under our due diligence, we must ensure that they are compliant with the Public Procurement Regulations 2015 and have undertaken all the necessary legal and contractual checks to make sure that they're compliant under the procurement regulations. Skanska Infrastructure Services and M Group have demonstrated they can meet the needs of the service as originally contracted and meet those requirements. We, the County Council, have also served a VEET notice to the outside market just to ensure that there's no external challenges to this novation taking place. Milestone Limited will work to the same principles and standards and accreditations they have in the existing contract, and the current contract will remain the same. Fundamentally, the Skanska Infrastructure brand is really being rebranded to Milestone Infrastructure Limited, and this also includes their senior management team, and all the people that we work with currently would come across as part of Milestone Infrastructure Limited. Within that, we also need to ensure that we have a comprehensive and robust mobilisation plan to ensure that we've got operational readiness for day one and that we can actually maintain the service on your behalf for Cambridgeshire. We've undertaken all the due diligence checks with Skanska and M Group, as well as the Milestone Group. Therefore, subject to committee approval, CCC receiving no challenge from the VEET notice. Timescales involved with this process include on the 17th of March, signing a novation agreement. Then we'll evoke the mobilisation plan on the 18th of March with a view that Milestone Infrastructure Limited under M Group Services will commence the delivery of Cambridgeshire County Council's Highway Services contract. So our recommendation is that the committee approve the novation of the County Council's existing Highway Services contract from Skanska UK Limited to Milestone Infrastructure Limited. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Emma. Members, it is open for discussion debate, so I've got some hands already appearing. I'll take them in order as they appear. The first was Amanda Taylor. Amanda, please ask your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report, Ms. Burden. It doesn't seem very long ago since we were choosing a contractor. At that time, we had a lot of member workshops. We talked about the criteria we would have for the new contractor. This change in contrast has come rather out of the blue. And, I understand that that may have been dictated by events happening. But I just wonder if you can tell us any more about whether the council's had any previous experience with Milestone's parent company, the MEG. Were they, for example, one of the bidders when we were looking at to whom to let the contracts last time? Okay,
thank you, Amanda. What I'm going to do is I think I'll take another question from Simon King and then ask Amanda to, ask Emma to come back. So Simon, if you ask your question, then I'll come back to you, Emma, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Emma. Just wondered on this transfer, two questions, whether there is any opportunity to tweak the KPIs. As you know, Emma, I've long been very dubious about how fit for purpose the KPIs are. And the second question relating to that is, will the people that we serve in Cambridgeshire notice any difference or improvement, indeed, in the work that the new contractor does? Thank you.
Okay, Emma, if you'd like to pick up those two to start with, and then I'll come to other members, okay?
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, M Group Services is actually new to the County Council, it's fair to say. However, they are known to other parts of other local authorities with some of their other umbrella companies in terms of Dyer and Butler, who are on their highway frameworks. But M Group and Milestone are the wider parent company is new to Cambridgeshire County Council.
Sorry, Emma, the second part of the question was, I assume the answer is no, that they were not part of the previous discussion when we set the contract with Skanska.
That's correct. They, as I say, they're a new group to Cambridgeshire County Council.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
leading on
based on the evaluations that took place at that time, is it your opinion that MEG would have scored highly had they bid at that time?
We have followed the same processes that were put in place at that time, and obviously, you know, we would have to have assessed it at that time to actually deem what would have been applicable. I don't know if Richard wants to come in on that.
Thanks, Emma. Yes, Councillor Taylor, just to confirm Emma's comment, so that the process for this contract transfer is exactly the same as if we were re-tendering a new contract. So the M Group are subject to the same checks and balances that Skanska were when they originally tendered for the contract. So on that basis, our view is that M Group would have scored the same if they had been part of the original bidding.
Thank you.
Also, I think just to add at this particular point, it is, of course, we're not the only county council that is going through this process. There are other county councils who have contracts with Skanska, so they are going through the similar process to us across the country. That immediately comes to mind. Hampshire is going through the same process. Just so you're aware, we're not unique. We're one of many going through the process. Okay. Back to Emma Murden, please. Can the comment from Councillor King, please?
Thank you, Councillor King. So therefore, when we do the checks and balances, this isn't an opportunity to change the current terms within the existing contract.
How to get on, Doreen?
But as you know, we can review these things within the terms of the existing contract. So the working groups and development and looking to improve the KPIs is an ongoing piece of work. And we have captured the vision and values and priorities of Milestone Group as they come in and they share those visions to actually improve and continue as the original contract was outlined.
Okay, I've got three other councillors and I'll take them on.
Could I just ask a quick follow-up?
Yes, by all means.
So the answer to my question, yes, there is an opportunity to improve the KPIs. Can you just clarify what the process is going to be for doing that, Emma?
There's not an opportunity to improve the KPIs as part of this transfer process, but it's a constant contract management process that some of the members are aware of, that we continue throughout the life of the contract to ensure we enhance the performance and improve performance in whatever area is applicable. So that actually sits outside this process itself. So no, they can't change as part of this process, but as you're aware, we do look to contract manage it. And in terms of what the people of Cambridgeshire see, we're pretty much branded as Cambridgeshire Highways across the piece already, so we intend staying with that branding with the people of Cambridgeshire. So the aim is that there's a seamless process and it's not visible the change to the members of the public and the services we deliver for them.
I think the answer to your question, Councillor King, is you can change them. We need those discussions. They don't fit within what I call the current discussion about the change of contract. But you're most welcome, I'm sure, with Emma. I know you've done work on the previously, so thank you for the work you have done. But there is opportunity to adjust, change, alter, update those KPIs. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ian Manning, Councillor Manning.
Thanks, Chair. I think you actually answered my first question, Chair, which is, but if we could just have an absolute clarification, are literally all of Skanska's contracts with county councils being novated across the Milestone? I see Mr. Cox is nodding, so I'll take that as a yes. So that was my first question. I mean, I think I read the thing in the report about, I think it used some term like strategic restructuring, which I think we can all read between the lines when we read something like that in a private company. This does look to me a lot like a private company's financial difficulties, financial failings, resulting in a public cost for a public organisation, in both in terms of officer time and the legal costs associated. And I think we should all be rightly annoyed about that. I do understand from some brief email conversations with Mr. Hughes yesterday the issues around what would happen if you didn't novate or you attempted to renegotiate. But I do share Councillor King's drive here that if we are, as Mr. Lumley said, I'm sorry to pick on individual officers here, but if we are saying this is like a retendering process, I don't understand why we couldn't do some negotiation. And I would have wanted to see something, even if the answer that came back is there's some sort of legal issue with that. I would want to have seen something in the paper that talks about that and actually tries to make the point that we're trying to be more commercial with these operators externally, and discusses it. Because if it's retendering, then we're retendering. We should be able to renegotiate parts of it, even if it's only in a minor way. Appreciate some comments on that from the officers or Chair.
Okay, I think I'll take that comment now. Okay, and whether Richard Lumley or Graham or Steve Cox want to answer that, I think, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, so whilst I said it's similar to a retendering, what I mean by that is it follows the same checks that we had to go through. So in terms of the sort of the pre-qualifying questionnaire and the questions within that we ask a company to provide evidence on and demonstrate that they're able to meet those requirements. So we've had to still go through that process to assure ourselves that M Group are suitable and for Cambridgeshire County Council, and are also able to deliver the contract as it is currently written. But because it's a novation that's taking place, the actual terms of the contract are not open to renegotiation as part of this process. It is a transfer of the existing contract to a new company. Now that's not to say that once the new company is in place, we can't have those conversations, and we would certainly be expecting to continue the conversations we've been having around KPIs, performance with the new contractor. But as part of this process, it is purely a transfer of the existing terms and conditions to M Group from Skanska Infrastructure.
Thank you, Chair. Can I very briefly come back?
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, it's a very good explanation. I think I'm also almost making the sort of point on the political level that if Graham has explained to me that if we decided not to novate, then Skanska would have to somehow deliver the other service with none of their staff. But I'm pretty sure that if every county council that's going through this process have got together and even mooted the idea to Milestone that we might all not novate, although we all know we probably have to in the end, and one council would probably break ranks, I do wonder whether Milestone might have offered us something. And I'm not expecting an officer to comment on that because I think that's a political comment. But
I think from my point of view, Ian, it seems to me that this will happen across the country. I think we will need to be very clear, say in 6 months' time, about how they're doing and how they're getting on and how they're being monitored and what are the standards that they're working to and are they standards that we have accepted within the contract, etc. So I think my view would be that maybe in 6 months that after there is a settling in period with the staff transferring, which is obviously traumatic for the staff, okay, and I think we need to recognise that there is a time when we will need to make sure that all is in our favour and all coming up to the standards that we would all wish. So that's a personal view, but I think I think it could be 6 months. It may be longer, but I think we should take some advice from Richard as to how it's settled in, and I think that will be for the new committee to perhaps, and the new chairman and vice chairman and committee members to perhaps oversee that down the line a little bit, Ian. Okay, that's a personal view, of course, but it didn't sound unreasonable to me when I spoke to Mr. Cox and Graham about it and Richard about it. Okay, can move on, please. Linda Hartford.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to say that I support what Councillor Manning has just said, because I am nervous about the effective selling on of our contract by Skanska. In simplistic terms, that is, you know, I am concerned, and I'll tell you why I'm concerned. If I refer you to paragraph 2.8, it says that assurance has been provided by both Skanska and M Group that service delivery on the ground will be unaffected by the transfer of the contract to Milestone. Well, actually, if we are going to have a transfer of this contract, I was rather hoping that it would be affected for the better, because perhaps Skanska can explain to me why grips ordered to be cut on Scotland Road months ago remain uncut, why jetting of drains on Scotland Road, Park Street and Oakington Road was also ordered some time ago and the order remains unfulfilled, why potholes on Hicks Lane, Girton were marked up with yellow paint for action and have waited so long for that action that the yellow paint is fading, why is a pothole that has just been filled on Dodford Lane for the second or third time filled with a mixture of something that is already breaking up. I absolutely support the concern of Councillor King about KPIs not being fit for purpose. And I do think that as this transfer takes place, we need to exercise our absolute robust monitoring of exactly what standards are being adhered to and adjust those KPIs accordingly. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'll take a couple of other speakers and then ask Emma or other officers to come back in. Noel Kavanagh, Councillor Kavanagh.
Oh yeah, on 2.4, there's reference to the VEET notice, and there's still a few more days to go on that notice. Is there any indication that there are going to be any challenges coming forward? And if there are challenges, would that mean that this process would have to come to a halt until the challenges are addressed?
Okay, thank you. I think I'll take those two questions before I move on to Councillor Giles. Okay, so Emma, can you please, or others?
In relation to Councillor Harford's points, I've noted most of those, but if you would like to send a direct list of the works that you're expecting that's outstanding, I'm more than happy to address those. As you're aware, on being on the KPI working group, we are trying to look and scrutinise the KPIs and make sure they're fit for purpose. So thank you to everyone's input in looking to ensure that they're fairly robust. And then Councillor Kavanagh's point on the VEET notice, we have some indemnities around that as also. So it would actually, we would have to review when we got to that point, should we receive such a challenge, what the situation is, unless Richard has anything to add on that.
Have you anything to add, Richard?
Just to confirm that certainly if the risk of any challenge is low, from the advice we've been given from legal and speaking with other clients of Skanska with highway contracts, the feeling is that the risk is low. If there was to be any challenge, then it depends on the nature of that challenge as to the impact on the process going forward, and we would have to take a view on receipt of the challenge or challenges.
Okay, thank you. And I've got the final comment is from Derek. Councillor Giles, over to you.
When I can unmute myself, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I listened to Councillor Hartford and I thought she's been visiting St Neots and Eton-Soken with the lines, etc. But no, I echo her words completely. And you know, my note here was before anybody spoke was, if it's a new contract, does it improve the standard of work, and does it improve better response times? And also, are there penalty clauses in place? Because, you know, I can't believe that we're just negotiating another contract without view of improvements. But there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. Emma, please.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. In terms of the improvements, some of those are actually captured in terms of the KPIs and what we value through those KPI scores, which does look at time, quality and cost of the works that the contract is undertaking on our behalf. Therefore, we can look, there are clauses within the contract that then does have an impact if those KPIs aren't performing as they were originally intended, which does have financial time implications associated with those KPI clauses in the contract. So a form of penalty effectively. So it's done at a higher level. But equally, if the standard of the required work isn't sufficient, then we do expect them to go back and undertake the repair to the quality that it should be carried out to in the first place.
Okay. Sorry, I was going to bring Derek. I was going to bring in Steve Cox wants to come in, so perhaps I'll bring him in first, and then you by all means come back if necessary. Okay, Steve Cox, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted picking up comments, the theme through members' comments. Clearly we're looking to get and secure improvements in the service, as we would always want to do that. The process of the innovation hasn't enabled that to be done directly. But what it is enabling is a resetting, if you like, of the relationship. So we've met with the M Group Milestone directors, and that's an important dialogue for us to have. Many of the staff will, if not all, will continue from Skanska into Milestone, which is important. But we have spoken, have met with the M Group senior directors, had a reassurance that they are fully committed to continue to improve services. The mechanisms will be through the KPI. So I think we take the opportunity of the change, which we are doing, to look again at how we can sharpen up the KPIs to reflect many of the comments that have come through from members today. And I think there is a clear understanding on our part, certainly, and also on the part of Milestone, that we need to see continuous improvements in the services that we're getting in Cambridgeshire. And this is an opportunity to enable that to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Members, I've got no other hands up, just looking to make sure. No. Can I just thank actually the members that contributed? A lot of those I think is very important for the communities that we all serve. That is certainly something that lots of the communities see on a day-to-day basis, and therefore make comment on a day-to-day basis through their local highways officers or through the website, etc. But standards are important. I think I'll just come back to what I said. I think in response to Councillor Manning, I think it's something that needs to happen first. Then I think it's a matter of letting it settle down. 2, and then 3. I think there needs to be work with the new company Milestone as we go forward. Members, I've got the recommendation which you've got before you. I see anybody that disagrees with that, can they please indicate? Councillor Manning, you are disagreeing with the recommendation?
I'd like to abstain on this, and I just very quickly explain that I think that it is a benefit to the whole council that we are not seen to just vote this through unanimously.
Okay, so, I will then actually go to a vote. Okay, and I'll call out your names independently about whether you're for or against. So I'll start with Councillor Connor. Are you for or against the recommendation? Okay.
For, sir.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Giles.
Abstain, Chairman.
Councillor Hartford.
For, with the caveat of all the things that have been said about improving the performance in the future.
Councillor Howell.
For.
Councillor Kavanagh.
For.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Manning.
Abstain, Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Also abstain.
And myself for. Dan, can we have the results of that vote, please?
That's 7 votes in favour, none against, and 3 abstention, Chair.
Okay, therefore the recommendations are duly passed. Thank you, members. Can we move on perhaps now to the next item, which is item 6, financial monitoring report? I think Sarah Haywood will introduce it.
Thank you. Morning. This is the finance monitoring report as at the end of January. And on the revenue side, the bottom line is an underspend of £323,000. Members will see that the report now, the monitoring report now reflects the grant which we received for lost sales, fees and charges due to COVID. But it doesn't really reflect the grant we receive for the additional costs, because that's reported centrally across the County Council. So the net COVID costs are 2.1 million to P&E, but then this is offset by underspends on the waste contract, additional income in traffic management and the street lighting adjustment, which members are already aware of. So that's on the revenue side. And on the capital side, there's some in-year underspends coming through in the capital programme, but it's important to note that the slippage to date is actually less than the capital programme variation, which is the budgeted amount of slippage. So it is assumed there will be some more slippage between now and year end in the forecast. That's all I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay. Members, anybody wish to come in there? Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I make a small suggestion to Graham based upon this underspend, that some of that could be used for my Wisby Cycle Man? I can't think of a better use for it at all. So, Graham, I leave that with you to consider.
Oh, well.
We'll come back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Can all members please refrain from from that sort of approach? Okay, but it did bring a smile. Did bring a smile to my face, Councillor King. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, I'm looking for a positive response from Graham.
Okay, well you might be lucky then, mightn't you? Having made that comment. Okay, Councillor Manning. Sorry.
No. I also had another question about the LHI.
Oh, go on then.
Could somebody give me an update on the Leverington LHI and just on the Leverington LHI? I read what's being done there, and it says further works required to take place in January 2021. We're now in March, and I just wondered if those additional works have been done.
Okay, I'm sure that can be accommodated. I'm not sure Sarah will be able to accommodate that particularly. She what I call counts the pennies and the pounds as well. So I think we'll take that away, Simon, and ask the appropriate officer to come back to you, and we'll take that as an action. And I would hope that we can action that relatively quickly, please.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Sorry, I was just going to clarify that this is a report as at the end of January. So it was then completed. So obviously it was, a little while ago.
Okay.
I understand that, Sarah. Thank you for that. And also, I'm sure you heard my plea for funding for the Wisby Cycle Map.
Okay. Well, 10 out of 10 for getting in twice, Simon. Thank you. Ian Manning.
Yeah, Chair, this is a more mundane question. I'm sure I've just misunderstood something, but could someone explain the line in the appendix about the executive director and the difference in the outturn? Someone's taken a pay cut, have they? Or
shall I respond to that?
Yes, please.
I mentioned the grant due to COVID, which is for lost sales, fees and charges, and that is lodged on that line.
Right, fine, understand. Thank you.
So I think it's the money I'm right in saying, Sarah, please correct me if I'm wrong, that comes from central government for the loss of that. Yeah. Yes. So it's showing up. It's money coming back into the council as it is in lots of other committees, adults and children's services, Ian. Thank you. Councillor Giles. You're muted.
Yes, I'm trying.
Okay.
Right,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Chairman, if we could turn to page 42, it would be remiss of me not to mention St Neots. And just over halfway down the page, I noticed that St Neots Northern Footway and Cycle Bridge, initially it was 1.2 million. We've now got £30,000 left in the budget. I'm not quite sure where the £90,000 went, but I'm sure somebody will tell me. There is an underspend of 22,000, and I will go along with other people, and in fact I've already written to Richard Lumley about a project which is urgently needed. With this underspend, if it's not, can you tell me what's going to happen to that underspend? Has it been allocated to anything? And if not, could it be allocated to another cycleway in St Neots?
Okay. Sarah, are you able to answer that, or would you like to take that away?
I can answer the general specifics, which is that this is an in-year forecast, so any over or underspend will roll forward to the following year. If it wasn't to be needed the following year, it could then be removed as such. But the assumption is that it will stay on that line and roll forward to next year.
So I think the answer, Derek, actually is you need to talk to the officers about what you've just said about the budget and can it be transferred from one project to another project. Suggest you engage with Richard Lumley's team to see if that can actually happen and give him some details about exactly which cycleway you're talking about within your area.
He knows exactly what it was.
Okay.
I should be typing as we finish the meeting, Chairman.
Okay, good-o. Okay, Councillor Kavanagh.
I notice in the appendix, I mean, there are some lines there under the category of potholes. And I'm just bringing this forward now. And from my observation, cycling around beyond Cambridge, the roads are in a ferocious condition at the moment in the sense of the amount of potholes that have appeared over the last couple of months. So this underspend, I just think if that revenue is actually going to get directed towards filling potholes, I think they're going to find a big hole appear in this underspend. And linked to that is, over the last few weeks, I haven't seen the potholes being repaired on particular routes. And is this, the famous dragon patcher, is it operating?
I can answer that. Yes, it is. Okay, and it's not just the one. Sarah, I think possibly between you and Richard Lumley, I don't know whether you wish to make any comments in relationship to the two previous speakers, Councillor Giles and Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Yes, Chairman. I mean, just to confirm, the dragon patches are operating, as are our pothole crews around the county. If there's any specific location that you're aware of, do please let me know, and I'll follow up those locations and get an update back to you. And just in terms of, I have received Councillor Giles' correspondence, and that is being picked up by the team and considered as part of the programming for next year.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, I don't think you have anything else to add at this point, do you? Ian Manning, sorry, you've got your hand up. Is that a legacy or a new one?
Sorry, Chair, legacy.
Okay, okie dokie. So members, I see no other hands actually, and what we're being asked to actually is for the committee is asked to review and comment on the report. I think we have certainly made some comments on the report, and there are certain actions for members and officers to take away and come back. Okay, members, are we all content with the recommendations as laid out on the paper? I'm looking to see hands that I will only, there are no hands being raised, so I take that as unanimous. So that's a unanimous decision to support the recommendations. Thank you, Sarah. Can we move on, members, please, to the next item, which is the Integrated Transport Block Fund allocation. And that's, I think, going to be introduced by Elsa Evans. Okay, so Elsa, can you please introduce the report, please, which is item 7, members.
Hi, yes. This item is the Integrated Transport Block. So we are proposing to allocate this funding, which comes from the Department for Transport, is the Local Transport Plan Capital Grants the integrated transport block element. The money is released from the government to the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. And over the past years, the Combined Authority normally would pass the money to the two constituent local authority. So that's Peterborough City Council and Cambridgeshire County Council for us to manage and spend the money. So the proposal of this money, we expect it to be 3.19 million, or it might be a little bit more, depending on the split between Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, which the Combined Authority will confirm at their board meeting in June. So the proposal here is provided as long as this funding is given to us by the Combined Authority. We propose to spend this money in a number of targeted programs because the money 3.19 million is relatively small, so it is more effective if we divide them up to spend for the different purposes. And the purposes and the amount associated for 2021-22 are listed in paragraph 2.2 of the report. That's on page 72 of your agenda pack. Some of the larger ones are the Local Highway Improvement Initiative, how they spend the money by or allocating to individual projects, and they have got their own allocation arrangements. The road safety one is similar, and it depends on the accident level and other factors. A big chunk is for delivering transport strategy aims, and a review is ongoing at the moment on the prioritization methodology. So we are proposing to allocate that chunk of money later on and bring back the proposal for individual projects back to this committee in the summer. So this proposal now is just for the different programs that we're putting money to, as in paragraph 2.2.
Thank you, Elsa. Now for comments, Councillor Manning, Ian.
Three quick questions, Chair. The major scheme delivery, could you just explain how it's decided what that money gets spent on? Is that the reference to the tip in 2.5, or is it something else? And where would the public see how we're deciding? Because I understand it's basically getting schemes ready. It's not doing the schemes. Is how I'm reading that. But how would the public know where that list of schemes is in terms of what we've used the money on? Second question, the 15,000 accessibility budget that's mentioned, was that spent last year? And if it was spent, then presumably that means there is a demand, and therefore why are we not allocating more? But obviously if it wasn't spent, then that's presumably fine. And the final one, the air quality monitoring. This is a specific example in Cambridge, I appreciate, but it sounds like what we're doing is allocating money down to the districts to do air quality monitoring. Yes. If you think about the Chisholm Trail development, where the county is closing Newmarket Road, there's a concern around traffic, the official diversion route is Coldham's Lane. And I know people there would like to see air quality monitoring there, but it sounds like the county are closing the roads. How would the district then use the money to do air quality monitoring, or will we just do air quality monitoring as part of that project? I just want to understand where this air quality monitoring, how it gets used, and what the mechanism is.
Well, I'll ask Elsa to come in. Certainly the money for air quality is given to the districts, Ian, and that's historical, okay, and it happened last year and I think the year before. But Elsa, I wonder if you could help, and then I'll bring in the other two councillors with their questions. Elsa, please.
Okay, so firstly about the disability one. So this is a small pot of money for when things are required ad hoc. So they are spent, and how the money is spent, usually they will be put on the transport delivery plan for that particular year. But in other cases, we can provide a breakdown of how that is used at the end of the year when we do the normal capital reporting. So that is the disability one.
Could I just, Elsa, could I just very, very quickly?
Yeah.
So was the 15K last year all spent? That's what I'm asking.
The year before, 2019-20, yes, and 2021, the current year, we will know at the end of the year when we finalise the account.
Chair, if you allow me, what I'm getting
Yeah.
at is obviously if we spent all the money, then why aren't we allocating more this year?
Okay, I think what Elsa's saying actually is we're not quite at the end, but nearly at the end, but not quite. That she'll need to take that away to give you a concrete answer. Have we spent the money this year? She gave you the answer. I think the previous year answer yes. So I think actually perhaps that's something that Elsa and take it away. I think it will be a matter for Sarah Haywood as well to input into that discussion. So I understand the question. I think actually we need to give the officers perhaps a little time to actually finish the job, as you might say, as we come to the end of the financial year, and if you're content with that approach. You're shaking your head, so I assume that answer is yes. Okay. Can we move on? Simon King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Chair, we haven't dealt with my other two questions.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Elsa?
And the monitoring, as Councillor Bays says, that is money that we give to the district council, and this is for monitoring only. This is not actually delivering the air quality mitigation. So the district would come up with what they want to spend in terms of monitoring, and this is what the 23K is for, and that's also the reason why it is only such a small amount. But for how it is spent, again, we can provide details after the year end.
I think the question was, I think, also where there is monitoring and where there are extensive closures of roads.
Yeah.
What does the district do in those cases? If I can just give you an example, Ian, there was an air quality monitoring in Fen Stanton, where the old A14 was, and of course, since it's moved, the air quality in that particular spot is vastly increased. So I think you'll find there is some movement that the individual districts do. Graham, do you want to come in at this particular point? Would that be useful?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm just very briefly through you to clarify that point. I mean, as Elsa said, the districts have like a set programme. So I think, Councillor Manning, the point you were asking is sort of on scheme specifics. Could it be used? I think in reality it's quite difficult for that because they have a set programme of air quality monitoring which we can try to influence, but it's sort of a mix of fixed sites and some mobile activity. So I think actually that in relation to specifically the question you're raising around Chisholm, I think we need to work with the project on that to get specific air quality monitoring at actual notice. And I do understand the point, so maybe we can have a chat after this just to sort of understand the concern and see what we can do with the project team. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
And the final one about the major scheme development, and that is correct. It is only for getting schemes up to a shovel-ready stage. So some of the major schemes, if they are already a project running, then usually they would be covered by that particular project. But this fund is for getting other proposals that are likely to get to a stage for delivery and get them to shovel ready.
Okay. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Elsa. I'll look forward to having some more detail on the delivering transport strategy aims, as you promised we would be getting later. It's a lot of money that's going into that area, and my personal view, and I'm not going to mention the Wisbech cycle map, Mr. Chairman, you'll be pleased to know, but my personal view is it would be nice to put some additional funding into the LHIs, because I know how much they are valued by local people. And I would hope that if not on this occasion, perhaps on a future occasion, we could look at putting some more money into those. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was more of a comment than a question, Simon. Okay, I'm going to move on, I think, to Linda Hartford.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very quick question. We've referred to the Transport Infrastructure Programme. I thought that at previous meetings at this time of year, we've actually had the tip provided for us as an appendix. And I appreciate it's a very long wish list, but it is an interesting list for us to work against with our constituents. So am I mistaken? Do we not normally get that? Do we get it in connection with something else? And if we do normally get it, please may we have it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Elsa?
A bit of clarification for that. Usually, or in the past few years, we will score the schemes in the Transport Investment Plan and make a proposal of which are the high scoring ones for allocating this part of the ITB money. But this year, because there are a number of other things that are ongoing, the review of the methodology is still in progress. The local cycling and walking infrastructure plan is ongoing still. And also a report on the future transport priorities is also ongoing. So because of a number of these factors, we are delaying the allocation of the money to the schemes in the Transport Investment Plan. But the Transport Investment Plan itself, the wish list, that has been agreed, and that will be published on the County Council's website. That was considered outside the meeting in January by this committee.
Can I make a suggestion, I think, at this point? With regard to the ITB, which is, from memory, is done per district. So each district has a sheet or 2 or 3 or 4. Can that please be at the end of the meeting or tomorrow, please circulated per district to members? So for instance, Simon King would get Fenland, Councillor Hartford would get South Cambs, Ian Manning, etc. would get City, and Councillor Fuller would get Huntingdon Shire. So if they could be circulated electronically, I think at the end of the meeting, that would also be, I think, of some use to local members that then can actually see what and remind themselves what's on the list, because it is a yearly programme and it does change. Can I just actually then go back to the question which I think Councillor Hartford, with all what you said originally, Elsa, what is the timescale, please, for when those other issues that you highlighted, like the cycling and walking work that is ongoing at the moment, when will that be coming back to members, please?
We are intending to bring it back in the summer, so July or June or July.
June or July.
This committee. To this
okay.
Committee.
So that needs to go on the forward plan for that particular time, which can be picked up in the forward plan.
Okay.
Please. Councillor Manning.
Just a very quick one, Chair. I'm happy to support this, but I do have this concern around the way we've answered the question about the accessibility fund. I do think if we know that we spent it all last year, it should have been higher this year. And I hope there is some level of flexibility in this that means that, you know, if we hit the 15k, money can be slightly allocated within the transport plan. We're not sort of stuck in very rigid 15k to 50k and you can't spend any more.
My understanding, Ian, is that obviously if money needs to be divide from one budget to another, then that is and can be done. Okay, and I don't think it is necessarily confined just to this budget as well. You can via from other budgets as accordingly. So if there is an underspending in this particular area, it can be spent on something else and via if that is under pressure. Dare I say, as normal as we have done in the past. Okay, we hope we get the budget right, but as we know, we are living through some difficult times. I've got Andy Preston here, so Andy, please contribute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I, as Elsa has highlighted, the Combined Authority are yet to finalise the split between Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. Can I therefore suggest that any changes to budgets across 2.2 are agreed in delegation by the Executive Director in consultation with the Chair and the Vice Chair for any changes to those budget figures if, for whatever reason, we receive an increase or a reduction in funding.
Yeah.
It also picks up Councillor Manning's point that if there is at any point during the year an underspend in one area or is a higher demand, then it could also be agreed again with Chair, Vice Chair, by the Executive Director.
Okay. I mean, what the recommendation says, and I'll read it out, members. It says ITB funding as long as the funding is passed to the County Council by the combined authority. And therefore, obviously, what we don't know at the moment, and it won't be until June, I think is Elsa said, that then we anticipate that it will be no change, and we anticipate that the budget won't change, and hence the recommendations it laid out in the highways initiatives and road safety, etc. But actually, when you do know, then I'm content to take that as that something can come back to delegation if that is a change that needs any alteration at all. I'm content with that adjustment. Members, are you all content with what Andy has just said, please? I see no dissent. I think we've come to the end. There's no more hands up. I've got the recommendation as laid out on the paper, but I think it just needs perhaps an added sentence. I'm trying to think of the words that precise as we sit here. Any change to the anticipated funding from the combined authority can be delegated to the Executive Director in consultation with the Chairman and Vice Chairman. Apologies if those are not quite the right words, but I'm sure somebody with better than me, Dan, or other members. Are members content with that approach, please? I see no dissent to that. So I see no dissent to that recommendation as laid out on the paper. So take that as unanimous. Okay, thank you, members. If we'd like to move on, please, to the next item, which is the HOS, Highways Operational Standards Annual Review. Mike, I think Atkinson is due to speak to that, please. Item 8, Mr. Members.
Yeah,
Mike.
Thanks very much, Chair. This is the annual update to the authority's highway asset management strategies and policies. The report and appendices set out how the council implements a long-term preventative approach to highways maintenance, seeking to minimise whole life costs. Appendix 3 to the report is the Highway Operational Standards document, the HOS to which Chair referred, and that's a compendium of a broad range of highway policies and standards. And recommendation F to this report would enable other policies approved by this committee to be incorporated into the HOS where that's appropriate. Further to the publication of this report, I am pleased to confirm that officers have now submitted the authority's Incentive Fund self-assessment questionnaire to the Department for Transport. And that submission again places the council in the top band, that's band 3 for that assessment. If accepted by Department for Transport, that will ensure that the authority receives maximum funding from this source in financial year 21-22. DFT will now assess that submission and the extent to which it demonstrates that the authority is implementing the highway asset management approach. And we anticipate that DFT will inform the authority of the outcome of its assessment prior to the start of the next financial year. The report and appendices include a number of assumptions regarding levels of funding to be received from the Department for Transport for year 21-22. Those assumptions were broadly that the levels of funding received in 21-22 would be the same as the previous financial year. It was necessary to make those assumptions because the authority had not been informed of actual funding levels when the report was written. DFT has now informed the council via the combined authority of the levels of capital funding that will be allocated to Cambridgeshire in year 21-22. And officers are now working through that announcement with the chair and vice chair of this committee to determine and understand any potential impact on the HOS document and its associated programme of works. That's in accordance with recommendation G to this report. Consideration will also be given to the budgetary amendments made at the meeting of the full council held 9th of February 2021. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Councillor Manning.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of comments. Could you briefly talk about how, given we're going through procurement for a new asset management system, how the link is made between the current HOS and that procurement process? I mean, just basically, I suppose what I'm asking is someone checking somewhere that the new system supports all the stuff in all the conditions in the HOS. The second thing is, in terms of the detail in Appendix 3, we've got a thing on page 6 that talks about busy roads being checked once a month. On the following table on page 7, there's the same thing about prestige footpaths. But on page 8, we get to prestige cycle paths, and they're only inspected twice a year. I don't understand why there's a disparity between those three things. I mean, obviously, a pothole in a cycle path is rather more dangerous to a cyclist than a pothole on the road is to a car, unless it's a gigantic pothole. So that's the second thing. Why is there no parity there? And then the final point is, given that we have some cycle paths that are obviously blocked by vegetation on a sort of cyclical basis, I would have thought there would be built into this some sort of checking of those cycle paths after the growing season has happened. So if you could address those 3 points, very grateful. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll bring Mike in before I go to other members, because there's quite a few hands up. Okay, so let's deal with that first, please. Mike, can you please try to address some of the issues for Councillor Manning, please?
Sure. Taking the first point on the procurement of an asset management system, forgive me, Councillor Manning, I'm not quite sure to which system you refer. We have a pavement management system, which does a lot of the number crunching of condition data and helps us identify schemes. And we have relatively recently re-procured that. Or are you referring to a broader highways asset management system? And as I'm sure you're aware, our current system is the Insight system.
So I was the things I was thinking of, and Richard will be able to help me with one, but one's the Carbon Tech system that we're looking at for gullies and stuff, and one is the other one that I've been battering Richard about every couple of months. As I understand, that procurement process is still going, so thank you. You'll probably be able to clarify.
Perhaps I'll bring Richard into this point as I see his hand come up. Okay, Richard, can you please assist?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Councillor Manning, just to confirm, so it is the Carbon Tech system is currently going through the procurement process, and we're working closely with procurement on that, and that will, we will ensure as part of that process that there is the link back to the HOS and how we carry out our gully maintenance going forward. The procurement of the wider system, the Insight system, off the back of which the Report It tool sits, that is currently being looked at, and the team are inputting into the specification of that system. So through that process, we will ensure that, again, there is tie-in back with the policies and strategies we've got in place. And there is an update on that going to a forthcoming chairs and vice chairs meeting, and then we'll be in a position to update further following that.
Okay. Mike, can you please try to address some of the other issues that Councillor Manning raised?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In terms of inspection frequencies, they are, whilst we don't totally follow the National Code of Practice, they are very largely based upon recommendations in the National Code of Practice for highway maintenance and management, which is where those frequencies have come from. They're also based upon risk and the histories of defects and claims that we have. They are reviewed from time to time as part of this annual review. and that does broadly accord with what's in the National Code of Practice. Notwithstanding that, I'm quite happy to take that away with the team and consider the inspection frequencies for the Prestige cycle routes to which you refer.
Okay. So, Mike, you'll come back in due course when you've considered that with your colleagues.
Yes, I think yes.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.
Yeah, my final point was just the one about the cyclical maintenance for.
Yes, cycleways and yes, it's cutting back the vegetation or the tree or the bushes or the whatever that happens, particularly over the summer. If I'm reading your question right, Ian, and it happens in all of them. It happens in my division, and I'm sure it happens in Councillor Ryan's and everybody else's. So it's about those inspections. So the one that is most important for me, believe it or not, is on the guided bus, because many of my constituents and Councillor Fuller's use the guided bus one as well. So, Mike, it's about the inspection regime, if I can call it that, please.
Yes, we can take that away and certainly have a look at that. And indeed, we might be able to ascertain, well, I'm sure we will be able to ascertain the types of defects that are reported via our online or other systems in relation to vegetation and cycle tracks.
Okay, I'm keen now to move on to Councillor Giles and then Councillor Fuller, Councillor Hartford, Amanda Taylor and Noel Kavanagh. Those are the current ones that I've got. So, Derek, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, if I can guide people to the page 116 of the report, which is titled 18 at the top, and it's the 9th item down, which is the cyclic grass cutting, weed spraying and gully emptying. I note that there's 2,693,000,000, no, was it 2.693 million pounds allocated to this? I'm absolutely amazed to know how on earth that is spent on gully emptying. The reason I asked that is at a recent Freedom of Information request, the request came back that said that there was no gully emptying in the previous 5 years. So has there been an underspend on this? I would hope so. If so, has it been underspend in previous years? What's happened to that money? And what's happening next year or this year and next year to these gullies that need emptying? I know they have started, but my question is, what's happened to the money in previous years?
Well, I think I can answer the first part about the current. As you're well aware, money was allocated through the General Purposes Committee of 130 to bring in extra resource. There are now 4 teams emptying gullies. Okay. The way forward in the budget, there was allocation for increasing the budget to emptying gullies. Did you support that, Derek?
I believe I did. Yes, I think I did. I would have done.
I'm not sure you did, by the way, but never mind. We'll move on to that.
Now, Chairman,
can I finish? Can I finish, please?
Yes.
Can I at least finish? Okay. So there was money allocated within the budget to increase gully emptying. There was money allocated about verge maintenance. Okay, and that is obviously all coming into the new financial year, which obviously starts in a few weeks' time. And obviously, officers are working about adjusting those budgets. Okay, the historical question that you've got is a historical question, I think, about the budget last year or the year before. So I think I'll let Mike answer the financial question. But to reassure you and your residents, there is regular gully maintenance happening today with 4 extra crews, and next year the increase in budget should cater for that, and the officers are certainly working on that at the moment. Okay, let's go back to Mike.
For clarification, Chairman, I did not vote against that budget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that. Thank you, Mike. Budget for historic.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the budget to which Councillor Giles refers is not all drainage cleansing, gully emptying. I think that also includes other cyclic activities,
yes,
such as weed spraying, etc. I am not sure if there has been underspend in previous years. I would doubt it, but I would have to go back to the team that actually manage that budget to
okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can
It might be, forgive me, Councillor Giles, it might be that Richard, who will have oversight of that budget, might be able to help further. But if not, I can certainly take it away and revert to you with the
I think it would.
previous years.
My suggestion is for you to take it away, work with Richard and Sarah Haywood, and answer the question that Councillor Giles, the historical question about the budget, and then come back and inform all members of the outcome of your discussion, please.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Will do. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller. Good morning, Ryan.
Thank you, Chairman. I've waited quietly up until these next few items. My point's quite a specific one on Appendix 3. And, I should start by saying I really do understand why we adopt this asset management approach to the roads. And I acknowledge all the extra funding we've put in, both in recent years and in the recent budget you just referred to, Chairman. But I have to say, and it really goes to the point that some of our colleagues have mentioned earlier on the Skanska item, I've never received so many complaints about the standard of the repairs to potholes that are taking place at the moment, or indeed the standard of the surface dressing programme, which has been really, really atrocious in parts of my division around St Ives this year. And I note at 3.14 in Appendix 3 that I just referred to, there's a very interesting note on insurance claims. And the wording states, the number of highway-related insurance claims received can be indicative of both network condition and how well the network is being managed. And then following that, there's a graph and a table, which are essentially telling us the number of insurance claims in the last 4 financial years has more than doubled. I think one thing I can say is at least we're not in South Cambs here in Huntingdonshire, because theirs seem to have risen 5-fold. But still, it doesn't paint a very good picture generally across the county. And if the wording of that is correct, it doesn't paint a very good picture of how the network is being managed. So I wonder if we could have clarity on that point. And I'd also be interested if there is any further breakdown on that, of how many additional insurance claims are being received as a result of the dreadful surface dressing programme that we've experienced this year, and if there's any clarity on why the surface dressing programme has been so poor this year. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I think I'll take that question now and let officers give an answer. So it may be between Mike and Richard Lumley and possibly others to come back to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off. Thank you, Chair. The one point I would make on the table to which Councillor Fuller refers is that's insurance claims received. It's claims made, and gives no indication of the numbers of those that might have been repudiated and not paid. Obviously, we don't pay all claims as received, and I guess they're notwithstanding the points that Councillor Fuller makes about highway condition, and it's very dear to my heart to keep it as good a condition as possible. There might be a number of factors that affect whether people are minded to make claims or not. But yes, it can be indicative. I would accept that. In terms of I don't have figures to hand as to the percentage or absolute numbers of claims that might or might not be associated with surface dressing. Indeed, that might, I'm guessing now, but it might actually be difficult to mine that data because it's unlikely that claims refer to surface dressing specifically, I suspect. In terms of the quality of surface dressing, it's not something that I manage directly. I don't know if colleagues would like to comment on that. But in general terms, surface dressing can be awfully susceptible to weather conditions, in my experience.
Okay, perhaps it would be appropriate to bring Richard Lumley in at this point, please.
Thanks, Chairman. I mean, in terms of quality of pothole repairs, that is something I am aware of. And as has been highlighted by other members during this committee, it is something that we are working very closely with Skanska, and indeed will be continuing to work very closely with Milestone going forward to improve both the quality of the repair and also the timeliness of the repair. Notwithstanding that, obviously, we are in the time of year where there will naturally be an increase in the number of potholes, but I agree, we need to ensure that they are being dealt with to a level that is appropriate and acceptable to local communities. In terms of surface dressing, that's something I wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware that there were significant complaints and issues around surface dressing. So I've made a note of that, and we'll take that away and explore further with the team. As Mike has touched on, there are a number of factors that contribute to the effectiveness of surface dressing, and more than happy to set those out and explain those probably in a note and circulate to this committee for you. But I will take that away and to understand that particular aspect further.
Councillor Fuller, do you want to come back at all?
Just very briefly, if I may, and I don't sort of pick on Mr. Atkins' point there about insurance claims. I completely understand it's probably an indicator of success internally of how many insurance claims are effectively resisted. However, my measure with my residents of success is that fewer of them feel the need to make insurance claims because their cars are being damaged by the state of our highways. So if I were in Mr. Atkins' position, with all due respect, an alarm bell would be ringing that insurance claims have doubled in some areas and risen fivefold in South Cambs. And that's all I shall say on the matter, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Richard. If that note that you're preparing on surface dressing, I think it would be useful, bearing in mind lots of other members have issues about surface dressing, if that could be circulated to all members of the council, not just this committee, please. Councillor Hartford.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm really grateful to Councillor Manning, who's raised some important issues about maintenance, and I'm fully supportive of those. Councillor Fuller, I think you read my mind, because I'll skip past my little prompt note about insurance claims. But, you know, everything that's been said so far does have a great relevance to the comments that I made rather robustly earlier about the Skanska contract. My question, please, is at para 3.2, we see the wonderful increase in footway maintenance budget of £20 million over the next 5 years. I cannot tell you how delighted I am about that. But what I'd like to know is when we can expect to see how this will be allocated, because I see that priority is given to the most used footpaths, but I do feel that this unfairly prioritises cities, towns and larger villages over the smaller ones. And we do need to remember that those smaller villages quite often have no bus services and are therefore obliged to walk further and more frequently. I would like to know how we're going to deal with the allocation, please, of that wonderful increase in budget. Thank you.
Okay, so who would like to answer that? Is it Mike or was that Richard, please?
I'm happy to kick off.
Yeah, fine.
Funding, as indicated in the budget amendment, is very recent, obviously, and we're still really working through the mechanics of that with colleagues in finance as to how that money will be allocated. As Councillor Hartford points out, our overarching strategy and policy regarding footway investment is, as Councillor Hartford rightly says, to prioritise and seek to improve the busier
Can I very quickly come back on that? Unless Mr. Lumley wants to make a comment before I do.
No, thanks, Councillor. No, nothing further to add to Mike's comments. We're sort of early days, but working through that with colleagues to pull the programme together.
Okay, well, all I want to say to you is that whilst I am a great supporter of ensuring that we don't demand too much from our officers in terms of adding to their workloads, you do need to acknowledge that actually this particular budget allocation is one that will fall very, very well with our residents. The number of complaints we get about the condition of footpaths is huge. And so all I would ask is that I appreciate you've only just known that you're getting this money, but please can you give it priority to look at how we use it, because it is of such importance, not just to our maintenance of our assets, but also to the health and well-being of our residents. So I know you've got huge workloads, but this is hugely important. Please give it as much priority as you possibly can. Thank you.
Okay. I suspect you might get the answer, yes, thank you. I think it possibly appropriate to move on, which is Councillor Taylor. Apologies for Councillor Taylor, Councillor Cavan, and then I think we'll conclude the recommendations and go back to them. Councillor Taylor, Amanda.
Thank you very much. And I should say, first of all, apologies for the interruptions my end. I've had a few phone calls and knocks on the door during the last item, so I apologise also if I've missed hearing something that somebody else has said. But I wanted to raise a few things. The first one is in 3.3, Councillor Manning has already drawn attention to the importance of maintaining cycleways and footways, but in 3.3 of our report, there is a suggestion that there's a geographical basis for how things are prioritised. There's the geographical considerations, i.e. more emphasis on footways, cycleways in the south, more emphasis on carriageways in the north. Now, I'm somebody who uses the footways and cycleways in the south of the city, so this would be an advantage for me. But looking at things overall, we need to keep our footways and cycleways good for people to use in the whole of the county, because, you know, even if we do have more people using cars in the north, it's not right that people should be deterred or feel it's unable for them to be able to walk or cycle either. So I'd like to see that based on usage rather than to have a geographical bias in that way. The other thing I wanted to bring up is on behalf of a colleague in the south of the county, actually, about shared paths and the maintenance of those, how often they're cleared, because there is no point of spending several thousands of pounds on having a shared use path suitable for walking or cycling if it then becomes so overgrown that people cannot proceed down it. The maintenance issues are very, very important. I don't think we're keeping up with them. And this was evinced very much when we had our recent local highways improvement panel, because there were many bids coming forward for what should really have been maintenance issues, like yellow lines that wear away, zigzags outside schools, fencing, bollards, etc. We don't want the LHI fund to be taken up with those sorts of things. They need to come out of maintenance. And I do think it needs to be made much clearer to members what we can expect in terms of maintenance, and that things are maintained so that infrastructure we put in place is actually effective. a yellow line that's faded away is no use at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll take Councillor Kavanagh's and make that the last one, and then ask Mike or Richard to come back on the comments that you've made, Amanda. Noel.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Page 94, 4.6, there's reference to street lighting, and yeah, there's a clear statement saying, you know, street lighting is excluded from this strategy, obviously because it's a PFI. But the thing is, street lighting, as we're all aware, it's a hugely important part of the infrastructure of Cambridge and beyond. But we have a kind of perennial problem with residents complaining about, you know, the darkness along certain streets and so on, and combine that with the pavements, which, as we know, have their problems and are hazardous in many places. And currently, it's the LHI budget that picks up the kind of responsibility for dealing with lighting, because year in, year out, we've got requests brought forward for funding to put in streetlights where streetlights are absent because of, well, it's a few years ago now when the PFI exercise took place. As we know, there was quite a large removal of streetlights. So my question is as the County Council completely dropped its responsibility for lighting, you know, it's the PFI's responsibility, apart from the quite slim LHI budget, as Councillor King made a plea earlier on. The LHI budget is hugely important. Residents really do benefit from it, and it should be increased. But I'm just saying that, is there another way of sponsoring the maintenance, and not, well, it's not the maintenance, it's actually the putting in of streetlights where they were taken out in the past, apart from the LHI budget being used for it?
Okay.
Does the County Council do that sort of thing as well?
Yes, sir. Just a reminder, we are coming on to the Working Party's Local Highways Initiative, and perhaps that can also be picked up there. So Mike or other officers, please, some comments from points made by Amanda Taylor and Noel Kavanagh, please.
If I may, Chair, just to kick off, taking Councillor Taylor's points first, if that's okay. In terms of geographical split, very largely the way that we prioritise maintenance and derive programmes of maintenance schemes is not geographically based. It tends to be fundamentally based upon asset condition and whether the time is right and the treatment is right at the right point of the life cycle of the asset to intervene. So we would consider condition insurance claims. Again, we would take into account any accident records, etc., and derive programmes of works, particularly capital works, rather than saying so much is allocated to each geographical area for any given asset. That's very largely the case. And similarly, discretionary revenue funding is divided in accordance with condition and in accordance with Appendix Q of the HOS. I think what that relevant paragraph might have, forgive me, I've forgotten the paragraph number, but I recall the paragraph to which you refer, Councillor Taylor. I think there might think that there might be a greater proliferation of certain types of assets in certain areas, or obvious. I forgive me for stating the blindingly obvious, but clearly there will be a high density of footways in Cambridge City, for instance. That might be perhaps more the genesis of that paragraph. But I do take your point on that. I'm not sure, having reread the paragraph, that maybe we need to actually revisit that, because I would hate to give the impression that significant amounts of our works are divvied up on a geographical basis. Then that's the essence of the asset management approach. I think the other point that Councillor Taylor made was regarding sort of maintenance issues cropping up on LHIs. LHIs are, I think there's a report coming to this committee, perhaps following this report regarding LHI. So I won't sort of dive into that, but obviously, you know, we're very grateful for all the funding we get for maintenance, and we try to distribute it as best we can within asset management principles. But we will never have all our assets in perfect condition, and I completely understand that there will always be more that people would like, and it will therefore might be requested in various forums, I suspect. Councillor Kavanagh's points were very largely about lighting and the PFI. As you pointed out, Councillor Kavanagh, that is sort of beyond the scope of our asset management policies and strategies, and very, well, not for very large, I think it is completely contained within the PFI. So unfortunately, I can add very little to that.
Okay.
Colleagues manage the PFI separately. I don't know if Richard Lumley has anything you wish to add, Richard, to any of the points.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, just picking up the street lighting aspect. So there isn't a separate street lighting budget, as it were, other than what is already part and parcel of the PFI. And as you rightly pointed out, Councillor Kavanagh, the sort of core investment period of the PFI resulted in a significant reduction in the street lighting, the number of street lights across the county. There is no policy in place that looks to readdress that reduction in street lighting, and therefore it is excuse me, very much left to individual local communities should they determine that they would like to reinstate a street light or install a new street light. And from the county council's perspective, that is then seen as a new piece of infrastructure on the highway, and therefore that the options available for that are either through the LHI process or privately funded highway improvements. That's the current position. It's something that perhaps actually could be looked at going forward. It's not something, as far as I'm aware, it's not something that's been looked at since the inception of the PFI and the original policy put in place. But at the moment, we are still abiding by those original intentions.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, I think you still got, thank you. You read my mind. Your hand has come down. I think one of the things that of listening to this debate before we go to the recommendations is the link between earlier report in respect of the transfer from Skanska and the contract. And I think that comes back to standards, that comes about how it will bed in the new contract. So I think a lot of this actually will need to, as we go forward in asset management, particularly actually with the increase in budget for not just for footways, but for other things, which is in the report at 3. So I think there is things to come forward in respect of the standards about surface dressing, about potholes, gullies, etc. And I think that will be something that the officers will need to take away as we go forward. And some of the things which have been mentioned today are obviously not part of the what I call HOS family, if I call it that. Okay, so I think there has been a good discussion, which I think he's grateful for members bringing a lot of things to the attention of the officers. But I think there will need to be more work done as we go forward, particularly with the increase in budget in certain areas and about providing information to residents, area committees, parish, town councils, etc., who obviously do become engaged, particularly with local highways initiatives and what does come forward as well. So I think it's also communications that needs to take place. So I'm going to go to the recommendations as laid out on the papers. There's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G was the last one, and I think G encapsulates any amendments that needs to be made under delegation. So I'm going to take them on block. I've seen no dissent from the recommendations per se, so I'm looking to see if there's any hands raised that disagree with that. And I see none. Oh, I see Councillor Manning is going to disagree.
Yeah, no, not to disagree. I just do want to stress that I think we've talked a lot of things about this meeting that need to check, not just the points I made, the points others made, that bits of this need to be tweaked. And I think that's on the basis I'm going to support it, that it's not just, it goes ahead exactly as written down here. No. There'll be tweaks. That's why I mentioned, I think, G, okay, because it is agreed by the exec. So I think there is the facility to tweak it, as you say, and that I think is captured in G. That's why I particularly pointed out G. Okay, with that, which I think has been taken on board, are we all content with that? I see no dissent, so that is unanimous. Members, I need just to switch off my camera for a moment or two. I will be only a moment or two. So Mark, would you like, I'm content with Mark continuing, but I will only be a minute if you'll give me the opportunity to switch off my camera for a few moments. I will only be a minute or two, so I will come back shortly.
Okay, members, we're going to go on to the next item, which is, bear with me please, and caught a bit on the hop there. The A14 Cambridge Hunting Scheme update, and Matthew Danish is going to present the petition. Chair, I'm so sorry. We now have moved to A14 Cambridge Hunting Scheme. We've received a petition relating to this item from CamCycle, the contents of which have been circulated to the committee. Can I please now invite Matthew Danish to present the petition? Matthew, you have, oh, sorry, Matthew. I'll just wait for you to come on. Can you hear me okay, Matthew?
Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so I'm going to invite Matthew Danish to present the petition. Matthew, you have 3 minutes to present to the members, and the petition has been given to the members to look at. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can indeed. Thank you, Matthew.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Yes, in order to keep within the 3 minutes, I've summarized the petition and added our comments afterwards. Dangerous chicane barriers were recently designed and installed on the approaches of the new non-motorized user bridges over the A14 at Bar Hill and Swavesey, in contravention of official government guidance. Neither councillors nor the public found out about these sudden changes to the design of the bridges until the work started in January. The petition requests the council to 1. Remove the dangerous and exclusionary barriers, 2. Formally adopt Local Transport Note 120. In July 2020, the government published its official cycling design manual called Local Transport Note 120. The overarching principle of this manual is that all cycling and related infrastructure should be designed to be completely inclusive and accessible to all people. Chicane barriers are specifically prohibited because such barriers increase the potential for user conflict, prevent access for disabled people and many families with larger cycles, and create an unreasonable risk of injury to people cycling. By adopting Local Transport Note 120 as design guidance for all cycling-related schemes created by or for the county, you would help assure the public that you will always design infrastructure that meets national standards and is inclusive and accessible to all people. This petition is supported by CamCycle and the Swavesey and District Bridleway Association, in addition to at least 649 other signatories gathered in the past few weeks. The county bears responsibility for these barriers. Although they were installed by Highways England, we have learned that at least one county officer was involved in design discussions that only started in September of 2020, months after the publication of Local Transport Note 120. The non-motorized user routes will be adopted by the county this year, and these barriers would be a liability from that point. The process that led to their installation needs to be fixed as well, so that future changes to non-motorized user routes are always well-designed and inclusive. If there is a problem on a route, the evidence should be brought to local members, the cycling team officers at the county, and community stakeholders. Then, Local Transport Note 120 compliant options should be consulted on with them. We note that the GCP has already assembled such a group of stakeholders, which is the Active Travel Working Group, and they could be a starting point for the county as well. Finally, we ask members, 1, to add quote, removal of the barriers to the issues for submission to Highways England in section 2.3 of the agenda item 9, so that families and disabled cyclists with larger cycles are able to use the bridges again safely. And 2, to formally adopt the updated Cycle Infrastructure Design Manual, Local Transport Note 120, at the earliest opportunity, and ensure that Highways officers receive training about its emphasis on accessibility and inclusion for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I noticed that the chairman, Councillor Bates, has come back online, so I'll hand over to him.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Matthew. Apologies for the slight break. Members, have any member any clarification? It is clarification only. It's not a debate to address to Matthew. So, Noel Kavanagh, clarification only, please. Noel.
Okay, yep, I'll try. Question, clarification. The barrier that's the subject of this petition at Swavesey, is this causing the same problems that were caused by the barrier on the, I think it was the Francis Crick Road on the biomedical campus, which after campaigning was changed to be suitable for what all cyclists need? So basically, is it the same situation again?
Okay.
Without lessons having been learned?
Okay, Matthew, I've got another councillor wishes to ask, so I'll ask the other councillor first, and then I'll come back to you, Matthew, for the clarification. Derek Giles, Councillor Giles.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, has there been examples of motorcyclists using this pathway at all? And really, why was the barrier put in?
Okay. Thank you. Matthew, are you able to help? I think the first question is about the Addenbrooke site.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Kavanagh, the barrier, the situation is extremely similar, and those barriers were removed because they prevented people with longer or larger cycles from getting through and were considered a hazard. And Councillor Giles, I believe, asked about motorcycles. As far as I know, that has not been an issue, but Local Transport Note 120 does have discussions in it about how to deal with such situations. And I think consultation with local stakeholders is one of those things that needs to be done in order to determine the best solution.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Members, and thank you, Matthew, for your petition, okay, which obviously we have received. Just to remind members that Matthew will receive a formal written response from me as chairman of the committee, and I will now hand over to Mr. Preston, who will introduce the paper and obviously may make some comments and points in relationship to what Matthew has just said. So I think we'll hand over to Andy Preston, please, but you will receive a written response. I think it's 10 days, and we will duly send that to you in the fullness of time. So, Mr. Preston, could you please introduce the paper? We have got one other councillor who wishes to speak, and that is Councillor Mandy Smith, who will come after Mr. Preston has introduced the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members. So the report that you have before you this morning is an update on the A14 Cambridge to Huntingdon scheme. I won't go into too much detail on the background section. Perhaps take any questions on that. In terms of construction progress, the scheme is still in construction. So section 6 in Huntingdon is still being constructed at the moment. One of those sections is open to the inner ring road, and there are 2 remaining sections to be complete. They are hoped to be complete by the spring of 2022, although there is an expectation that that could be brought forward, but yet to be confirmed. The rest of the project is complete, and there are sections that have been adopted by the County Council. You will see that the contractor has a further 12-month defect period following adoption, but the County Council is now responsible for maintaining a significant number of assets along the A14 corridor. Appendix A has a list of those and progress with handover. Detrunking, so the old section of the A14 will be detrunked and also become the responsibility of the County Council to operate and maintain. That is still in relatively early stages. Potential for that to be complete by the end of this year. There is a clear process to follow. It is at this stage still the responsibility of Highways England to operate and maintain until that detrunking has taken place. And there will be a further report back to this committee later in the summer once that process has progressed to a further stage. So current local issues. So I contacted many of the members along the corridor of the A14 to get a feel for where some of the issues lie around the A14 from now that it's been open and operating for almost a year now. Obviously, we've had the COVID condition with regard to traffic volumes, so it's been difficult to assess the true impact of the scheme. You will see from 2.3 that there are a number of issues that remain a concern, particularly with regard to traffic volumes. Those are on the B1043, the A1123 between London and St Ives, and the B1040 through Hilton. Those are three key areas with regard to traffic volumes, which, as the report proposes, these issues will be escalated to Highways England. The legal agreement between the County Council and Highways England requires Highways England to monitor the impact of the A14 on an annual basis, and any impacts that are greater than originally expected as part of the traffic modelling will need to be looked at by Highways England, and the County Council will clearly support local communities in ensuring that these issues are escalated and looked into and investigated. Some further issues, Fen Stanton, potentially around surface water flooding that's being looked at. Councillor Mundy Smith will talk about 2.3.8, which is concern around crossing of the old A14, now the A1307, between the New Barnes Lane and Cambridge Road junctions to Fen Drayton. Some challenges there around pedestrians crossing to a new NMU that is currently being constructed on the Fen Drayton side. Then to some issues around trees. You'll have picked up there was a significant number of trees that have been planted as part of this scheme. There's been some challenges around the take-up of some of those trees, and that has been looked at by Highways England's contractor at the moment. There is a 5-year maintenance agreement that Highways England are required to ensure the maintenance of trees over that period, whether that is by Highways England on their network or whether it's on our network that we've adopted. So Highways England are required to maintain them for a 5-year period. Impact on the village of Dry Drayton and the challenges around the potential closure of the avenue. That's something as well that Highways England were also required to monitor over a period, and the impact of the A14. And that's again something we will escalate and work with Highways England on. On to 2.4. So members will be well aware of the challenges around the damage to our network that is caused by the construction of the A14. Quite a considerable issue. This has been not necessarily caused by the use of the diversion routes, because the majority of those were using the strategic network in terms of the officially signed diversions. But members will be aware that local communities experience quite a lot of disruption during this scheme. I think quite a lot is probably an understatement. I'm sure members will agree. Lots of HGVs trying to avoid the strategic diversions by following sat-navs and using the local very unsuitable parts of our network to shortcut around the roadworks during closures and during the works themselves. And that's left quite a negative legacy in terms of the condition of our network now, that has had to endure quite an increase in volume of traffic, and particularly the type of traffic that those parts of our network have taken during that period. We have been working with Highways England to establish whether improvements could be made to maintenance and repairs to that damage carried out by Highways England, but unfortunately that is no longer possible. But we have, both Highways England and the County Council, been speaking to the Department of Transport about this particular issue. We have had an initial positive response from the department in potentially being able to provide funding to carry out some repairs to this damage. And we are currently working on costs and working with DFT, Department of Transport, on that matter, and we will be able to update members of the committee and the members along the route as those discussions progress in the coming weeks. Finally, 2.5, the legacy fund, some details in the report and in the appendix around the £3 million legacy fund that was put together for the A14, what projects were funded, and also some information around the parish projects that had some initial challenges around delivery, which have improved in recent months, and the County Council have got involved with those that are on the highway network that have been delivered on behalf of the parish councils. But it is still led by the A14, and they are still finalising the details of many of those projects. and they are included in Appendix C. So finally, then moving on to the issue of the barriers on the two bridges, one at Bar Hill, which is an NMU bridge at Bar Hill, which caters for pedestrians, cyclists and equestrians. The bridge at Swavesey doesn't cater for equestrians, it is purely pedestrians and cyclists. So the results, this results from an independent Stage 3 road safety audit that was carried out by Highways England on completion of the scheme. That is a standard requirement of all highway projects, that an independent audit is carried out with respect to safety. This was carried out by Highways England and in consultation with the County Council's road safety team that were also involved. It highlighted two particular issues from a safety perspective. One was the risk of vulnerable users of the bridge coming into conflict with cyclists travelling at speed down the approach ramps. So both of these bridges have relatively steep approach ramps. They are large bridges that are required to cross the A14. The other issue was the risk to cyclists entering the live carriageway at the bottom of these ramps. So at the bottom of both of these ramps, there is a live carriageway where there is therefore the risk of cyclists losing control and entering the carriageway, which obviously is a key risk to consider. With regard to LTM 120, this is a key national cycling guidance document, and it's very much welcomed by the County Council, and certainly a key document in informing design. However, in all instances, whether that is cycle design, highway design, the key design factor is safety for all users. That always has to be the fundamental factor with regard to design. And that requires a balanced assessment across all design standards and guidance of all types, and they have to be considered by the designer. So the barriers are a result of a Stage 3 safety audit, and the designer's response, which obviously is Highways England as the designer, their response in response to that. The barriers, incidentally, are the same design as exist on the guided busway. So the guided busway has the same design of barrier. The approach ramps to these bridges, I can confirm though that the County Council has now adopted. So we are now Highway Authority and adopter of these assets. They have transferred to the County Council. And we are in the process of reviewing their provision and the layout of both of all four barriers associated with the two structures. We will be able to update the committee and members on the outcome of that process once that is completed. That concludes my introduction, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. And for Matthew's response, you'll receive all that in a written response, Matthew, in due course. Okay, thank you, Andy. Can I move on now, please, to Councillor Mandy Smith. Mandy, over to you to say as you wish. You have 5 minutes as well as a local member. So
I just wondered if I had a time limit. Right, thank you, and it's literally just good afternoon. Basically, I would like to good morning to chairman, members, and officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Now, some of the things that I'd like to raise, I apologise if members feel like they've gone off the subject, but I'd still like to raise them because they're more or less they're relevant, or relevant to me and my residents. Now, Matthew Danish has raised about the petition. I have also been contacted about this. Can I ask, if it's appropriate, data protection and everything, if I can also receive a copy of the response that he gets, because I've been copied into correspondence and I've been asked for their removal as well, and I'd like to follow this through. So if that's appropriate and Mr. Danish doesn't mind, can I have a copy of the response? Can I just ask, I don't know if I can, but can I just ask Mr. Preston a question? With regard, for clarification, with regards to the bridge at Swavesey, did I hear you say that's not meant for horse riders?
That is correct, Councillor Smith.
I thought it was for everybody.
No, it doesn't have the higher parapets. It requires a higher parapet for it to be equestrian standard bridge.
I have a feeling there's going to be a whole new load of emails later. Right, okay, we'll leave that one then for now. But right, basically, I've got a couple of cycleway schemes. Now, we are all working differently these days, so responses is not probably as good as what we expect. But I've still got a couple of cycle schemes which are part funded by Highways England. I'd like to know where they're at. So for that, I'd like to ask for a meeting with the head of Cycleway, which I believe is Mr. Alex Dean, and you, Mr. Chairman, if you would not mind just indulging me in just attending a meeting so I can get up to date with those schemes. I have had some responses, they just lead to a whole new load of questions. So that's that. Now, the report does mention about a crossing at New Barnes Lane, and there is a big issue in that area. There is, unless of course we go back to the bridge, and then that's solved everybody's problem. So I'd like to put that back on the table and find out why it was took out. But I do also hope that the conversations that are taking place about a crossing in that area will include myself as the local member. I will then talk to residents and hopefully we can come to a conclusion about a safe crossing at that point. So I requested the Zoom meeting. Now, again, during the construction of the A14, it has already been mentioned that there was a lot of damage to roads and verges. I'm not going to go over it, but given that there is, and I'm pleased that a lot of my roads are in that report. Thank you very much for that. I welcome that. And I do hope that we can get some works done. Basically, I'd like to see that monitored through the committee. And I was wondering if the report or that table on its own could come back to the committee at a future date, just to be monitored throughout the committee. So seeing as a lot of what I said or was going to say has already been mentioned, that's about it. So it's a copy of the response that goes to Mr. Danish, a Zoom meeting with Mr. Chairman and the head of the highway, cycle paths, and that the report about the roads to be fixed would come back to the committee.
Okay.
I'm well within my 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. In answer to your first question, of course you will be copied in to the response that goes to Matthew Danish. I'm sure that that's not a problem at all as local member. Second, I'm certainly quite content to organise a Zoom meeting with regard to what I call the legacy fund. I think that's really what you're referring to, and that certainly should be organised with Alex Dean, who is on next, as they say. Okay, I think it would also be useful, bearing in mind we're talking about safety and crossings here as well, that we have Mr. Alex Dean and Andy Preston on that Zoom meeting. I'm quite happy to do that. I would also suggest that perhaps Mark Howell, who's the vice chairman, join us, so that that would be not unreasonable, I think, and I'm sure you'd be happy for him to join to have those discussions. For the point of correctness, members, I am the county council member for Fen Stanton, and of course what Mandy's talking about is in her division, but it lands on my side of the other road as well. So so I think I will have to declare not an interest. I'm aware of the historical conversations with Highways England, which do go back a few years, so I'm happy to organise the Zoom meeting with the officers, and I'm sure somebody will take some notes and organise that accordingly. Dan, please note. So members, you're quite happy to ask Mandy any matters for clarification or anything. So same process. So Ian Manning, Councillor Manning.
Just a very quick one, Councillor Smith. Can you just confirm I heard you right that you'd support the removal of the barriers?
I'd like to look into it first, and I'd like to know what happens, why they're there, and basically have a site meeting, given COVID rules and everything. But I have been in touch with everybody. And it's not a double act between me and Mr. Danish. So, you know, I'd like to look into it further.
Okay. I think what she's saying is she wishes to see the response that we send out, and then obviously perhaps have a further conversation with officers, whether they're safety officers or not, at a future date. So I think that's what Mandy said, if I'm right. And I think also I think what I heard her say was she was surprised that it didn't cover horses.
Very surprised. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was what I heard. Okay, just for clarification. So members, the floor is yours. You're most welcome to say anything now. Thank you, Mandy, for your contribution. Please stay on. So I've got a few hands. There's 3 already. Councillor Hartford is first. Thank you. Linda.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I'm not going to comment. I'm the other local member affected by the barrier issue. I'm not going to make any specific comments at this time. I too would like to see the response and then maybe have the opportunity to provide input at that time. So With regard to the report that's before us today, first of all, I want to thank officers for their attention to the many, many, many issues that I've already brought to their attention. I'm sure they're sick to death of them. At the start of the A14 project, I was able to take those issues directly to the delivery team, and almost always they were resolved. Attitudes and behaviour changed a good deal over the 4 years of the project. I'm always bemused by the claim that the scheme has been delivered. Yes, the through route on the first section has been completed, and many drivers are enjoying the benefits of the new through route. Well, except for the ones that have already encountered the potholes that are appearing. But the project isn't finished, and it is extremely sad, I think, that Highways England's attitude is so mean about the final stages. Skimping on reparation of damage that has been a consequence of work on the main part of the project is just not worthy of you, Highways England. Or perhaps my expectations of you were too great. I actually believed your promotional fanfare about care for the environment and sustainability and your promise of a positive legacy. It all started so well, and I do hope that you're not going to spoil the ship now for a ha'porth of tar, or should that be tarmac? So it is somewhat disappointing that Highways England will take no responsibility for the items in Appendix B, damage to the local network. I do hope that there is compensatory funding coming from government for reparation of assets, such as the Bar Hill roundabout that saw hugely increased volumes of traffic that used the roundabout as part of various diversions, not to mention its use by those who are absolutely lost due to poor signage. I'm grateful for the projects in my own villages that have been facilitated through legacy funding, and I hope to see delivery of outstanding promises that have been made to villages that have experienced the most serious adverse impacts. Progress on these has been painfully slow. Thank you again, officers, for all that you've done to try and chase that through. I cannot accept that a commitment to care for the environment is demonstrated by planting thousands of twiglets only to see 50% of them die. I urge Highways England to review that policy on future projects. This is the single most criticised aspect of the project in my division. Every single one of my villages has raised it as an issue, and I'm grateful to officers for their efforts to support local ambitions to address it. Legacy isn't just the tangible assets that are left at the end of a project. It is also the memory of how those assets were delivered. The project director of the A14 project promised me early on in the project that there would be a wash-up after completion in which local people would be involved and from which lessons would be learned for future projects. I am very much hoping that this will happen still. I could write a book about the experiences of local communities during this project, but you'll be pleased to hear that I'm going to stop here. But I just want to finish by reminding Highways England that it owes us a bus shelter. Its habit of routinely skipping stuff is, I believe, responsible for the fact that mourners or those tending the graves of loved ones are currently obliged to stand out in all weathers if they have to use a bus to get to and from the crematorium. It is not my fault, Highways England, that you have this unfortunately extravagant policy of skipping stuff. It is your fault that the original shelter was skipped, and I would remind you that you owe us a bus shelter. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to carry on with two more speakers, I think, and then ask the officer to come back. So the next one is Councillor Manning. and then Councillor Fuller.
Thanks, Chair. In the interest of time, I'll truncate one of my things. I had a number of representations, essentially, when I asked colleagues in the closest to the local area about what they felt about the kind of what's in the paper as to go to Highways England. And essentially, there were a number of comments that all boiled down to the signage hasn't been updated to reflect the changes in the roads. So I hope that we can take that away and maybe something can be added to the set of recommendations. I've got more detail, but I won't. It's very, very detailed, so I won't go into it now. My second point is I'd like to just propose an amendment in the paper in relation to the recommendations, just to say, in response to the petition presented to today's Highways and Transport Committee, the committee formally adopts DfT Local Transport Note 1/20, which is the note that Mr. Danish was referring to.
Okay.
I've got a second there on that.
So are you're making that a formal recommendation, Ian, to make that amendment? Can I have it there for a second, please?
I believe that's Councillor Taylor.
I don't see anybody's hand coming up. Can I suggest that we ask Councillor Fuller to come in at that point, and we'll return to your amendment, please? That might be a sensible way forward.
Oh, Ian, I'll second that if you want.
Oh, okay. Ian Manning, you mean? Okay, Councillor Fuller, we'll come back to the recommendation or the amendment. Ryan Fuller, Councillor Fuller, apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the inclusion of the concerns that you and I have been raising for quite some time now on the A1123, that being in the report today. And, I can understand Highways England's approach to the post-project review, that they're arguing the case of COVID means the traffic levels are not as they would be, and therefore it's not perhaps the right time for them to undertake that review. However, Chairman, as you're personally aware of, because you and I have been sharing the pain of this issue over the last few months, the level of HGV traffic in particular has increased very, very significantly on the A1123, going through St Ives and past your division. And it's fair to say, it's probably an understatement, that it's absolutely blighting the lives of some of our residents along that route. And I really am concerned that we don't seem to have a clear timetable of when Highways England are looking to complete that post-project review. And then to hear Mr. Preston talk about the agreement with Highways England that they look to monitor the impact on local routes through annual reviews. Now, I think if you and I have to say to our residents that probably the only mechanism for addressing this is through annual reviews going forward, I think there's going to be a lot of upset. And it's something I'm not really prepared to stand for. So my question is, in understanding the agreement with Highways England, that it is really their responsibility to tackle these impacts on local routes, what can we do as a county council in the interim to try and tackle some of these problems so that our residents don't have to wait for far away in the future reviews that are never quite clear on when they're taking place? I mean, we've already had Highways England in theory, look at this issue for us locally. And I think they sent somebody to stand by the road for about 10 minutes and judge that all the HGVs were local traffic, which is just nonsense. It's utterly incorrect. And a group of my residents in particular have done great work. They've been doing their own surveys, and they've provided this to our officers. Now I've got chapter and verse on where all these vehicles are coming from, the foreign lorries and all sorts of things. So Highways England really need to up their game in how they're looking at this. But on the basis of everything we've heard from Councillor Harford, I can't disagree with anything she's just said. I don't think they're going to be very quick to help us with this. But we can't leave our residents in limbo, Chairman. So I'd like us to look as a county council about the mechanisms and the means of us trying to do something to tackle this issue, even if then we have recourse back to Highways England down the line. Now, many of us have supported the motion that went to the last full council meeting around reclassifying the A1123, downgrading it to a B road. And I think whilst we accept that that may have some impact on dealing with that, with GPSs and sat-navs and things, there is also the associated problem of the funding issue, that changes the funding we receive for that road in the future. So I'd almost encourage our officers to look at, in the interim, whilst they're exploring that reclassification, is there a package of other measures that could be put in place that would be as effective, if not more so, that then wouldn't lead to us seeing that reduction in funding. there's almost a challenge in there, Chairman, of you've got a solution on the table that council has mandated us to look into, but in the interim, what else can we do that perhaps provides a better solution and that's going to satisfy our residents and finally tackle this problem, as I say, really is blighting the lives of residents, having HGVs thundering past their houses on what is, I know it's an A road, but it is a road through St Ives, past lots and lots of houses. It's a residential road, Chairman, as you well know, because you're getting similar concerns from your own residents. So I'll stop there, and hopefully there's some questions there that officers can come back.
I think, yes, I'll come in at the end, I think, because I'm not disagreeing, I think, with yourself, Ryan, because I've had considerable correspondence from my residents as well as your residents, and it is actually to do with signing of the road and the route, as well as other issues. So I think I will go to Mr. Preston, please, to perhaps come back a little bit on some of those issues raised. And I think it might form perhaps an amendment that we could consider about asking our officers to do something more than just the recommendation as laid out. But we'll come back to that, I think, later on. Mark Howell is going to come in first, okay? Mark, if you come in, and then I'll go to Mr. Preston, okay?
I wish to speak about the amendment that Councillor Manning has.
Oh, okay.
So I'll wait until then, but thank you.
Let's go to Mr. Andy, please. Can you address some of the issues which are raised, particularly from Councillor Fuller, I think, which is, I think, a sensible possible way forward in addressing it as to what we can do, not what Highways England can do, but what can we do and how will we monitor it? So Andy, please.
Mr. Chairman, just to cover some of the points that were made just briefly before that particular key point. In terms of lessons learned, Councillor Harford raised a very good point there about lessons learned. There has already been a significant number of lessons learned workshops for the A14, including the A428, is the next scheme that is almost upon us now. The development consent order has been submitted. So there are lots of lessons to be learned from the A14 that the teams have been working together with Highways England, and I've also got the A428 team to be involved with those as well. So there's a shared lessons learned process there. I've also requested, as Councillor Harford highlighted, that the parish councils are invited to a session to discuss the lessons learned of the A14 as well. So that learning can also transfer to the A428, particularly the damage to the local network and the diversion route challenges, which, as we all members all know, are a really difficult issue and a significant issue for local communities. So that is taking place, and I'll clearly make sure that does take place. The bus shelter, which is a minor point, we are continuing to take that with Highways England with regard to the crematorium, and we will continue to pursue that. In terms of signage, Councillor Manning, you raised the question about signage. The Highways England have been a bit delayed in implementing the wider changes to signage along this route corridor. We mentioned, as Councillor Harper highlighted, in terms of the scheme, it's not finished yet. In reality, there are significant things, just the loose ends to tie up. One of them is the wider and broader signage along the corridor. So things like St Ives and further afield in terms of direction signage. That work is still underway, and obviously work around detrunking elements as well. That all has to tie together. It's quite a big piece of work that Highways England are working on at the moment. So hopefully that will pick up most of those changes, and we'll make sure that members are aware of those. In terms of the post-project review timetable, obviously it's quite difficult at the moment to put an actual timescale on that, given the challenges around COVID. Hopefully we are becoming more positive now around COVID and the vaccine rollout. So hopefully October is a good time of the year to carry out traffic modelling. It's a neutral month to carry out traffic surveys, to collect data. So I'd like to think that we can achieve that by October potentially, but clearly Highways England we need to agree with that. I will get an update from Highways England on their timescale associated with that and support for that timescale, and I'll come back to members on that. In terms of the issues around the 1123 and the B1040, one of the main problems here is around satellite navigation systems and the process and the algorithm that you use to direct traffic. That is causing a lot of these issues, I feel, particularly directing traffic from the A1 south to utilise the 141 to St Ives instead of using the new road further south of Huntingdon to then come back to the old A1307. And the same in reverse for the B1040. St Ives back to the A1, the satellite navigation system uses the B1040, and that is a B road. So changing the 1123 to a B road potentially isn't necessarily going to solve the issue either, because it's used, the SatNav is using the B1040 at the moment in reverse. So it's likely to continue to use the B1123 if it became such. So it's quite a difficult problem. Now, in terms of what the county are doing, the county has carried out a survey, a more detailed survey using equipment along with the 1123. Obviously, it's at its own cost. The highways team, we've worked with the highways team to do this, to actually get hold of some data, some actual tangible data, because it's quite difficult with the likes of Highways England and others to take subjective views of residents of standing out and actually naming lorries and so on and so forth. Actual hard evidence of data has the most strength in those discussions with Highways England. Now, we've collected that, and it does indeed show that there is an increase. There's been a year-on-year increase in HGV traffic along the 1123, and we are about to share that data with the local residents, so they can also see that, the raw data also, so they can look at that in some detail. We can then escalate that within Highways England, and then really be able to have some detailed discussions on how that fits with the original traffic modelling that was completed as part of the development consent order process for the A14. And if that is different to what that suggested, then clearly there is a legal requirement for Highways England to start looking at what the mitigation could be. In terms of that mitigation, it is challenging. There is no real silver bullet to this, so to speak. It is quite a problem to resolve, and we do need to spend some time thinking about what the potential options are and drawing together some expertise in looking at what potential solutions could be. Clearly, the Command Authority are looking at the A141 in terms of strategic improvements to the 141, and also Councillor Bates and Fuller will be aware as well that the Command Authority are also looking at the St Ives area as well from a transport perspective, a strategic transport perspective as well. So we need to tie together all those work streams to look at this more strategically, to establish whether there's a solution to this. And I certainly appreciate the challenges that residents have with regard to HGVs, certainly coming through there during the nighttime hours and early hours of the morning, and officers certainly doing all we can to work with Highways England on that. In terms of the funding that the county has to do a lot of work on this, obviously that is another challenge, that the county council doesn't have significant amounts of funding to be looking at it itself. We do very much rely on Highways England funding this aspect. So that's another area to target with Highways England, is speaking to them about the costs associated with this and working with them to be able to come up with a solution that benefits local residents and reduces the impact on their lives as it is at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Members, I'm just slightly conscious of we're coming up to 12:30, so could you members please be reminded, particularly with the other items on the agenda. I'm going to bring in Mr. Cox. Can you?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I just wonder whether members would like to invite Highways England to come to a future committee meeting to hear firsthand some of the issues that have been raised today. I'm happy to take that forward if members would like that to happen.
I'll answer for all members on this committee. The answer to that will be yes, please. I think we do need to tie down some of the time issues, and I think I'll come to that after perhaps discussing the amendment. Councillor Howe, I think you wanted to come in about the amendment, please. At this stage, it has been proposed, and I think it was seconded by Amanda Taylor. So, Councillor Howe.
I think there was an arm wrestling competition going on between Councillor Kaler and Kavanagh, who was going to second them.
I think it was Kavanagh eventually that won, but I don't think we.
Chairman, very quickly, I've got no problems with this particular policy. I think it's an excellent policy. I've read it, and I know you and I have made reference to it. I'm just aware that it hasn't gone through the process. I know not all members here have seen it. So as much as I am very much in favour of this, I would just ask if we could just hold this over until the next committee where we put it to all members so they can look at it, and then we can say yes to it, hopefully say yes to it. I wouldn't want to prejudge which way I'm going to vote. But I'm just asking if we could just hold off on this amendment until the next meeting, please.
Okay. I think Ian Manning, I think you're being asked to put it back a little bit and to be reviewed when all members have had the opportunity to have a look and consider what is being suggested but by the cycling
I think
campaign.
I'm fine with that, and thanks for the suggestion for Councillor Howe, especially as I didn't give him this one in advance, but I have given him his moment in the spotlight.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Planning.
I take that as you're content to not proceed with the amendment, and we'll go forward.
And we on the basis that we'll do it.
Yeah, it'll come back. Okay. I'm slightly thinking about lessons learned here, and I think there are lots of lessons to be learned. I think we need to invite Highways England to come to a future meeting. Can I please give me some assistance? Does that need to be a formal recommendation for C? I think, do we need to, for instance, I'll give you my thought then. A possible recommendation C, that we formally invite Highways England to attend a future meeting of Highways and Transport Committee, and that officers of Cambridgeshire County Council prepare an appropriate report before engaging with Highways England at that meeting. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support that, but can I just suggest that we try and make sure that that's at the next earliest available opportunity, because I absolutely hear everything Mr. Preston's just said, and I know these are complex issues that aren't going to be resolved overnight. But in what I heard him say is there's lots of months and months and months of extra work, and unfortunately our residents can't wait for those big strategic solutions of A141 St Ives area studies.
Okay.
I'd really like Highways England to come in May if possible, or if not, it's got to be June as our next meetings, for us to put those points to them and try and get some resolutions as early as possible for our residents.
Yes, I completely concur with that, Ryan. I mean, my inbox has certainly filled up considerably over the months. So the question really, I think, is can something coming back by May, at the next meeting of this committee, May? Should we put a backstop if that is not possible? Why can it? So my question really for the officers, May, is that suitable time for you to do the necessary work to bring and invite Highways England back to May meeting of this committee? I think that is Mr. Cox, without Andy Preston perhaps to give us some steer about whether that is practical, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think what we'll do is we will reshape this report into just focusing on the issues. So we will go into maybe a little bit more detail on particular issues that have been referred to today, particularly those of greatest concern by members with regard to the traffic modelling and traffic volume challenges. And then immediately following this meeting, I will speak to Highways England. Highways England are aware and reviewed this report prior to being published. They are aware that it's been discussed today. And I will speak to Highways England about which is the best representative to represent Highways England in May. If members would like to see it in May, then I see no issue with that at all.
Okay, so seems like May. That's fine, thank you. Do I need to make any change to the recommendations? Dan, can you help, please? Does it need a change in the recommendations, or can it just be captured under the action log?
It can just be captured in the minutes. I'll also add it to the agenda plan as well, so under that item, so it'll be captured twice if you like. So there's it's not necessary for a formal resolution if you like. Okay, fine.
Thank you for your help. Members, therefore, the recommendations are there to note, I think, and that's A and B. I think we've had the debate. I'm looking to see if there are any dissensions from that vote. I see no dissension, so those are carried unanimously. Can I just remind members we are getting short on time, so can we perhaps move on quickly to item 10, which is Alex Dean. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. Could I just briefly say something?
Sorry, Ian,
could I just very briefly say something? Both, minding for your point about time, both Councillor Taylor and I only have this morning to attend the meeting. So if there's any way we can rejig some of the rest of the agenda so we can do the residents parking item before we have to go, we'd be very grateful, because obviously as Cambridge-based councillors, it's particularly important for us to be involved. If there's any way we can rejig the rest of the agenda, we'd be incredibly grateful.
I'm just looking. We've got local highways initiatives, the members working group. My view possibly is we could take that pretty quickly if we all agree. And what I will do is after this item, okay, I will bring forward the other one, okay, and then move back to the highways initiative later on. Okay, so I will jig it. Alex, if you'd like to be very precise, and
I'll try my best. Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this report includes improvements underway and planned relating to delivery of major infrastructure projects. Section 1 provides background. It refers to the Project Assurance Group, which was set up to review project delivery back in October. Section 2 identifies the main issues, which are 3 key areas. Area 1 is around systems and processes to control and report the delivery of projects. And this is detailed in paragraphs 2.5 to 2.10. It covers out all aspects of project delivery from feasibility all the way to construction. The second area relates to a development programme titled Managing Successful Teams and Projects, which is designed to improve the ability and skills of those associated with all aspects of project delivery. Cohort 1 has been through the training. Cohort 2 are currently going through, and there's future cohorts. The third and final area is relating to project reporting and risk management. So this details, aligned with the governance chart, which is provided in Appendix 1, consistent and compliant controls to deliver and report all infrastructure projects across Cambridgeshire. And part of this is regular reporting of the infrastructure projects to committee. And the first proposal of taking this forward is provided in Appendix 3. So as you'll see, there's lots of improvements underway. We're making excellent progress. We recognise there's more to do, but we've got this in our sights and programme going forward. So I hope you'll find this a useful update, and we'd welcome any comments.
Ian, you're on mute.
Oh, Councillor Manning.
So just very quickly, got to say first. Excellent stuff you put together, and congratulate Steve and Graham. And I'm sure we've been involved in this as well. This is, I know the public interest in this, and I know the pressure you must be under, and it's great to see that. Just the comment I'll make is that you've obviously chosen Prince 2, which is a very sort of top-down hierarchical model of project management. And I've sort of banged on in the past about kind of more agile methodologies, and so I just note the couple of points in the project. You've in 2.2 you've used something that sounds a lot like what Microsoft call t-shirt sizing. So everything's ranked in just a small, medium, and large, basically. And you've also made this comment about empowering project teams, and the organogram does read quite hierarchical. It's you've got the councils at the top, you've got this bit in the middle, and you've got the teams at the bottom. I'd prefer to see something that was trying to go towards something more where all those people can talk to each other equally. I understand it's not simple because you're talking about a very large culture change within the organisation, and doing that just like that is just never going to work. So the one appeal I'd make is if we could try and make sure we don't make the mistake I read about a lot with Prince 2, which is where you always apply this big complex framework to every single project, right, regardless of size. And I'm sure you're not intending to do that, but in the paper it makes it sound like, so if you've got a low risk project, we don't have to apply all these gates to it because of the risk. So that's my comments over. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions. Going to just remind members we are running out of time. Councillor King, Hartford, and Taylor, can you please keep your comments short and to the point, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got 2 points to make. I think this is a huge improvement, and congratulations to Steve Cox for driving this. I think that it would be useful to have a review of how this is working, perhaps in a year's time. And the other thing that I think, it's very good to bring the stuff back to the committee, but the main thing to bring back to the committee is exception reporting. So if something is going wrong, that's what needs to come to the committee. And I think that perhaps will save a great deal of officer time by just focusing upon anything that's going wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to see this report addressing the issues of project management within the County Council, not least because in my own division of Queen Edith's, we've had two major projects which have both gone badly over budget and over cost with the Hills Road cycle lanes and Fendon Road roundabout project recently. It's considered really by people in the area that the local member is responsible for everything that the County Council does. And therefore wish to make some points about the reporting. It is vital that the matters of when there are problems with delivery or budgets being exceeded go back to this committee, so that members know what's going on and can intervene when necessary. But it's also really important that the local members are kept involved in the process, because that is the conduit through which we can communicate with the local people. At present, while we haven't had that sort of system, what happens is that people come along to area committees and what the issues addressed there. They can't understand that the local councillors don't actually get the advance knowledge of what's going on. So on recommendation D, can we be assured that this regular reporting of projects to members is firstly the members of this committee, but also the local members for the divisions in which the projects are taking place?
Understood. Alex, over to you. I think I've got no further questions, so I'm intending to go, after Alex has spoken, straight to the vote.
Yeah, regarding Councillor Manning on the Prince 2, we're using the Prince 2 methodology, but we're adapting it to Cambridgeshire, so we are making it specific to these projects. Also we fully recognise we wouldn't go through the full 8-gateway process and all the detailed breakdown within that for a very small project. So we'd be running a light version for those smaller projects. Otherwise, you could spend more time managing the project than actually delivering the project itself. So we recognise that, we've got that one covered. Regarding Councillor King, so yeah, obviously regular review, and we recognise that we're constantly reviewing this process, and we're happy to report that back to committee when it's appropriate. In terms of exception reporting, the idea we had was that we would give this snapshot, which is in Appendix 3, but then obviously that would allow us to focus on the specific problem projects that need that attention. So yes, we recognise that's where we'd be putting our energy into resolving any problems, exceptions. Regarding Councillor Taylor, yeah, we've picked up in terms of we need live reporting of these projects. The budget management has been an issue, so we recognise that, and we've got that, built the cost profiling right throughout the project life cycle, very much at the forefront of what we're doing. In terms of local members, we have the member advisory groups for when those larger projects need that level of attention. We're also trying to standardise across how we deliver all these projects, and part of that will be communications plans, how we engage with the local members, how we engage with stakeholders. So certainly we recognise the need to have the local members fully on board with what we're doing. So we'll be I've noted that today, and we'll make sure that's fully built into the processes.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I think Steve Cox would like to come in at this point. Steve.
Thank you, Joe. Very briefly, just to thank members for your comments, and also to say that there's some changes in the systems and processes that members would need to be aware of, would want to be aware of. So the gateway process, for example. So we will be planning a member training / awareness session for the new committee when we get into the post-election period, so that you're all as familiar and aware of the systems that we've got running. I hope that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you, members, and thank you for your comments. I was just going to mention, for instance, when it talks about local members and those issues, Kingsdyke, I think it is quite a good example at the moment as we're going through the Kingsdyke development, and that's actually something that local members like David Connor have been involved in, as well as other members like Chris Bowden. So members, I've got the report in front of me, and those are A, B, C and D. I'm looking to see if there's any dissension from that. No, therefore I declare that as a unanimous decision. At the request of Councillor Manning, I'm going to move up item 13. Okay. I need to be assured, is Sonia Hanson with us yet? She's introducing the report, and without her, Sonia, are you here?
Chairman, I have text Sonia, and she was just waiting in the virtual lobby.
Okay, somebody will let her in. I can deal with item 11.
Sonia Hanson's just joined us, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Dan and Mark. So we have got public speakers. We have got quite a few members, so please allow sufficient time for those to make their comments before I get Sonia, who obviously will introduce it, as you might say. So if we can go first and foremost to the public questions. My concern, Dan, actually is, have we got the first speaker?
Sorry, Chairman, I'm right with you.
That's okay. Apologies for bringing it forward. My concern actually is some people will not be able to join because we've moved the agenda around.
Mr. Agradan is here, so I'll promote him.
Okay. Tell me when he's with us, please.
He's now with us.
Okay.
Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Agradan.
Good afternoon.
Oh, yes, you're right. You're very right. Which comes back to asking members to keep their comments very distinct. Thank you for joining the meeting. You have 3 minutes, so it's over to you to make your comments. And so please progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm talking to you from the Petersfield division. I've been in conversation with Councillor Jones, and I'm here to just represent the experience of some of the residents in the guest area. So over the course of the past few years, it's become apparent that the number of spaces available in the guest parking area is insufficient. The pandemic certainly increased pressure on an already pressured system. We've got around 60 or so resident spaces when everybody parks mindfully on our 4 roads. The average number of permits issued over the past 5 years has been 74, and 82 were issued in 2020. So there's quite a big delta between the number of spaces and the number of permits. On top of that, there's been a steady flow of major renovation work on multiple houses on our streets, which is great, but also means that there's an abundance of trade vehicles, skips, and even a few portaloos thrown into the mix, which are taking up some of those spaces. So the effect is that an already pressured parking system that's teetering on the brink is under even more pressure through all of this, not to mention people working remotely and not commuting, also adding pressure to it. So that's the broad context. I did just want to share a couple of specific experiences from residents that I've gathered. So this is from Robert, a resident of Guest Road. Recently, I had to attend Addenbrooke's Hospital for a week of radiotherapy treatment. As I'm classified as clinically extremely vulnerable, I didn't want to risk public transport or taxi rides to the hospital. Because there was little prospect of my wife finding a space for our car in the area after taking me and later collecting me on each occasion, I felt obliged to walk the 45-minute walk to hospital and back each day, despite the ever-increasing side effects of the treatment. I feel little consideration has been given to the impact on the more vulnerable members of society who need to rely on cars. From another resident, during the cold winter lockdown, we found our old car's battery goes flat unless we take the car out for a regular run. However, if we take the car out, then we can't find anywhere to park it, so we don't bother. So there's a car that's just sitting permanently in a residence bay until lockdown is released and we need to use it again. From me, my wife is 8 months pregnant. Fairly soon we'll be taking a trip to Addenbrooke's at short notice. I don't think she'll want to walk. I'm either going to have to rack up parking tickets on the yellow line outside my house, play a game of cat and mouse with others parking nearby, and then not move my car within 2 weeks of the due date, so I'll know it'll be somewhere close when we need it, or leave her in the house on her own with a 2-year-old while I go and retrieve the car from wherever I've had to abandon it because of a lack of spaces. You get the gist. So we don't think it will take much to relieve some of the pressure on our system and make it more dynamic so that we're not all fearful of losing a space. I'm not here to suggest solutions. I just wanted to raise your awareness around the pressure in this area and hopefully get an acknowledgement of the difficulty of the situation and the impact it's having on residents' lives, and hopefully a commitment to consult with us to improve the situation moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your comments, and please pass on our regards to your wife. and hope all goes well. Okay, on behalf of all members. I'm going to move on quickly to Jim Chisholm, who is now, I see, here. So Jim, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. A stitch in time saves 9. In the 1960s, as a student, I helped with parking surveys in Guildford, where an early controlled parking zone had just been introduced. Drivers then, as now, would spend many minutes driving around residential streets to find a free space rather than go to an off-street car park. The very name of these schemes tends to imply punishment for residents with a car, as well as punishment for South Cambridgeshire residents like me who visit Cambridge. In fact, they offer a big reward for those wanting more pleasant neighbourhoods everywhere. Such schemes can create order and certainty out of chaos. In the new post-pandemic normal, there is a risk that many will drive and park on residential streets rather than use public transport or park and ride. Given the gestation time for such schemes, we cannot afford to wait any longer for action. The benefits are multiple. Reduced numbers of parked and moving vehicles make it far more pleasant and safer for those on foot and bike who use such streets. The residents with a car can have greater certainty that they will be able to park on return from a trip. Space can be made available for the increasing numbers of light delivery vehicles, which may otherwise obstruct all traffic, as well as for car clubs. By reducing the number of known free commuter parking slots, it reduces the pollution and congestion citywide, and hence the delays to essential users and buses with their passengers. Paragraph 1.4 correctly states the effects of pandemic on reduced motor vehicle usage, yet paragraph 1.5 suggests anarchy as the planned policy. Will we have a situation where car use is up with car storage encouraged? Some 10 years ago, much work was done by officers around a mile of Addenbrooks, but nothing implemented. Are not the benefits of such schemes obvious? Research in London shows that reduced car use helps to make neighbourhoods less polluted and more pleasant for those who walk or cycle, and car ownership drops. From reading the papers, it seems 1, 2, and 4 are just different ways of kicking the can down the road. The obvious option of 3 must include the equally obvious GCP proposal for supporting an integrated parking strategy, but appears not to do so. To get the undoubted benefits and to prevent increasing chaos in some areas, we need to progress option 3 now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I'm going to move on, members, and the next speaker is Cambridge City Councillor Dave Bajet. You are here, I can see.
Yeah.
So, Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My message is a lot simpler, really. I agree with what the other 2 speakers have said, but we have a strategic plan in this city, both City Council, County Council, GCP, and probably the Mayor are all involved in trying to reduce the amount of traffic coming into the city. Resident parking was one of those ways of doing it. And we also are working on promoting active travel. As a Romsey Labour councillor, I've completely supported the County Council in their movements on Mill Road Bridge, which was to make it safer medically and to make it safer physically. And I would ask the County Council to continue with their pledge earlier on, where we were going to be offered resident parking. In Romsey, my part of the city, the areas surrounding us have resident parking. We just suffered the Coleridge resident parking coming in, and their parking then moving into, or the loose parking then moving into Romsey. We were promised to be next in the list. That's stopped. I'm just asking for you to treat us fairly and equally in the same way as you have other parts of the city. And for those other areas of the city that are being held up by this county council embargo to be released as well. We deserve the right to be able to park properly outside our car. And we also need to not lose sight of the strategic issue, which is to keep cars out of the city. Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Dave. I've now got 2 local members. The first is Linda Jones. Good morning, Linda. I can see you're there. So you have your opportunity to speak about this issue.
Good morning, and I'll be as brief as I can because I know that you're under pressure.
Can I deal with the second part of the paper first, which is from paragraph 2.3 onward. In paragraph 2.4, it makes clear that there are several areas in the city where there is undercapacity or over too many cars, however you like to put it. But two of those areas where there's huge pressure are in my area. And you've heard from the chair of the guest area, Veli Angaran, about the real distress that's caused to residents. I know that some work has been done so far, and that's been welcome. But I don't think it'll be solved by a return to normal, or even before a return to normal. The issues of undercapacity in some of these areas have been evident since before 2020. In paragraph 2.6, you talk about managing down demand, and I agree that that will need to be part of the way forward. But I also think there'll need to be a level of flexibility and being creative with some existing space. Some of the areas that I walk around and know very well as a local councillor, there are some single yellow lines where I think we could think about whether they're needed. And that kind of flexibility could really help. Cambridge is a medieval city with a tight core and tightly packed inner suburbs. And in relation to the options you propose, option 1 I think is irrelevant, but options 2, 3 and 4 will all probably need to be considered. And in paragraph 2.12, I do accept that further investigation is needed, but I also would argue that we need to act swiftly and you need to bring some recommendations back for discussion. So that's the second part of the paper, the local issues in relation to areas that already are residence parking areas. Thinking about the first part of the paper going forward, I would strongly agree with option 3 that we need to continue with the new schemes. And I think you could factor in parts of option 4. We all know now that actually there are resources available from GCP. And that the work on residence parking, new residence parking areas would go very, very well alongside the work they're already doing on city access. Why is it important to continue this work? Because it all fits in with managing demand. But I would make one comment, which is, I think, really important as a local member. We need to look at the size and the disparity of some of the current proposed schemes. I tried to take a scheme through in the York area and it just failed to get through. And it failed to get through because some residents were anxious about losing space. And in other parts of the area, residents were absolutely highly stressed because they desperately needed residence parking. If those areas had been broken up, the first area that wanted parking would have gone through quickly, the other area might have waited. So I think there needs to be some sort of flexibility here and rethink about the difference between areas and the use of local knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you for keeping it precise. Jocelyn Scott, you're the last on my list. So good morning, Jocelyn. I'm just quickly seeing if you're with us.
I think
yes.
I am, Chair.
You are. Good morning.
I am.
Good morning. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for having me at the end of the list of speakers. I would like to comment on both parts of the paper, but I'd like to comment on the residence parking issue first. When this was first proposed, that there be the overall Cambridge residence parking scheme and approach, it was done in conjunction, the county working together with the Greater Cambridge Partnership. And it was at that time that the Greater Cambridge Partnership and the county came to the conclusion that what was important was to provide to reduce congestion and pollution within the city of Cambridge. And it wasn't put forward from some selfish perspective simply to advantage the residents of Cambridge. It was put forward in the recognition that reducing congestion and pollution in Cambridge benefits everyone within Cambridgeshire, because it would be a very rare person from Cambridgeshire who does not at some time or another visit Cambridge. We have school children, the college children coming from the villages outside. So if there's congestion and pollution in Cambridge City, it impacts on the children that each of you, as a representative of villages and so forth outside the city, but each of you has, of course, responsibilities which I know you all take very seriously. And if shoppers come in from outside, they too will be impacted by congestion and pollution. And we've heard from the first speaker speaking about his chest issues, about, I think he mentioned asthma, or it was something along those lines. And of course, people coming from outside have those health issues too. Therefore, reducing pollution and congestion in Cambridge benefits the whole of Cambridgeshire. Now, when we go to the 4 proposals, it's actually clear really that 3 and 4 overlap, because 4 is talking about an overall approach by the Greater Cambridge Partnership in conjunction with the county. But that has already been done, and that was why the schemes were introduced in the first place. And therefore, it seems to me that number 3, implementing what was originally planned, is actually to fulfil the Greater Cambridge Partnership and the county joint approach to residents parking. And just finally on this, it was the understanding of residents overall, and I can point to one instance, or 2 actually, in my own area. Ascham went ahead, and Hurst Park Estate and Elizabeth Triangle were actually did not go ahead at that time, but they desperately need to go ahead, and that area needs to be looked at as a whole. And if the program were to be restarted, then this could be done. And Stretton Avenue is suffering highly in my area, and it needs to be able to go ahead as well as an overall program and project. And what's interesting is that when there are said to be objections, it's the agitation or frustration of councillors and residents. It's really not about frustration. It's about the need to have an overall plan, and an overall plan that was intended to be implemented from the outset by the Greater Cambridge Partnership, working in conjunction and partnership with the county. Now, on the second point, the issue about the residents' permits, it is clear that something must be done. And I think it's a very good paper overall, because pointing out what happens in other areas is very useful. If we are to reduce the pollution and congestion, I think that we can do it by perhaps reducing the number of permits that are allowed to each household. What we need to be doing is promoting bus transport for those outside the city, and within the city, the issue of car clubs. There is one in an area nearby me, the De Freville area, and that car club is used extensively by the residents. It has its own spot, which is a part of the residents' parking scheme. It's been factored in, and therefore it seems to me that that's another avenue that can be tried in conjunction with the residents' parking schemes, with the program implemented from now, because it was supposed to be delayed for 12 months. We've reached the 12-month period. Let's go ahead and satisfy the whole of Cambridgeshire, not just Cambridge City. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I'd like to move on now to Sonia Hanson, who will introduce the paper, members. So, Sonia, if you could please introduce the paper.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. Members will recall that a year ago, committee agreed to pause the development of any new residence parking schemes for a period of 1 year. So we've come back to committee since that year has now elapsed. Over the last year, we've had the COVID-19 pandemic, and travel and work patterns have changed dramatically. Parking by commuters has reduced, whilst parking demand by residents has increased in some areas due to oversubscribed schemes and more people working from home. In the first part of the report, some options have been set out regarding the way forward on implementation of new residence parking schemes. The second part of the report addresses the issues regarding oversubscription of some of the inner city residence parking schemes and proposes possible ways forward and to seek members' views. I do have an important point to mention that's just been confirmed since publishing the report, that GCP have now said that funding from the GCP for residence parking schemes has not ceased and would be available subject to the outcome of this committee's deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, members. And thank you for the members that have contributed to the thing. First speaker I have is Councillor Howell. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I've read this report and now I've listened to what people have to say, especially local members and residents. And this is a little bit more complex than I thought, to be honest, though. But then again, I'm not in the city, so maybe this is normal for those members who represent the city. I just want to think it is a very good paper, and I've listened very extensively, especially to Councillor Jones, but most especially to Councillor Scott. And I think I'm going to go with the officer's recommendation on paragraph 2.2 for option 4, especially now that we've heard from Sonia that the GCP are going to make funding available. But more importantly, because I think we need to do a little bit more work on this with our partners, the GCP and also the city, on how we actually approach this. And therefore, I think I'm going to have to say that I'm going to go for option 4 on this, and I'm going to make that as a proposal, which has been made already by the officers. Thank you.
Okay. Noel Kavanagh. Can members please keep their comments short and to the point, please? Noel.
Yeah, I'll be precise and get to the point on this one. The information that's just been given by Sonia, I was going to bring that up because I was at the assembly meeting where Peter Blake confirmed that GCP was still willing to sponsor the installation of residence parking schemes. I'm recommending that we go for option 3 and option 4 combined. And I do that very specifically, and there's a parochial element here. This time last year, when the decision was made by the then Highways Committee to postpone the future installation and development of new residence parking schemes, I was right in the middle of developing with officers the Romsey West scheme, the one which Councillor Bagent just referred to. And there's a slight kind of emphasis in this report that doesn't reveal the stage I was at, because it says here there were 14 new schemes, 8 installed and 6 not going ahead because of lack of support. Well, the scheme I had put forward, after a great deal of consultation with residents, we were at the stage of the informal consultation, and the majority of the residents voted to go to the next stage, which was to be the formal consultation. Unfortunately, the decision was made by the Highways Committee not to proceed any further. But you can imagine how upset, disappointed the residents were that their scheme, which they wanted the opportunity to vote formally on, was not proceeding. And one of the main reasons was, as Councillor Bagent alluded to, was we had successfully implemented the Coleridge West scheme, which is just on the other side of Mill Road. And I must admit, Coleridge West is a huge, as a scheme, it's a huge success. It has more than achieved all its aims of making the parking very reasonable. The verge parking has been cut out. It's safer. All the residents, even those who objected, are actually very pleased with that scheme. And Romsey West residents wanted the same. So what I'm pleading here is that we proceed from where we left off last year, because officers got to the point of, and Sonia will, I think, will agree with this, they got to a point where they were doing the street designs in a different way, because the team had been learning all as they went along in implementing the schemes across the city, learning ways of doing things differently so that the schemes would improve. And so we got as far as having the streets being designed for the next consultation. And in the paper, there is reference there in the list of disadvantages. And one of the disadvantages in not proceeding is that the experienced teams will no longer be employed on implementing residence parking schemes. Now, I think it'd be a great tragedy for these really experienced and skilled team to go out of existence. And I think the compromise which I'm suggesting is 3, go ahead with the schemes that were partially developed. That's the Romsey West one. And yes, carry on having an examination of how residence parking schemes can be best implemented in the city for the benefit, not just for the city, but for all other people coming into the city, using park and rides and so on. Because behind all this, as has been mentioned by the previous speakers, I won't go into it, is the county council has this very loudly, publicly declared aim, to cut carbon emissions to 0 by 2030. And residence parking schemes are at the heart of this. And I'm saying continue with the residence parking schemes now, no more postponements. And yes, I know it's parochial, I know it's my division, but Romsey West was virtually ready to go. And Sonia, I think, might give an update on that, about what stage that was at. And I'll stop now, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Okay. I'm very conscious now of time. It is now 1:10. And we have got other items to consider, members. I will come in when the other 2 speakers have spoken. The first is Ian Manning and the second is Amanda Taylor. And then I think I will round up the discussion. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just comment on the second section of the recommendations first, and I won't repeat things other people have said, but the new thing I'd like to add is I think we need to be extremely careful about the proposal around differential charging rates for EV and high emission vehicles, because it does have the potential to increase inequalities that are already there in society. I mean, essentially, what I'm saying is nice middle class people can afford electric vehicles. People on lower incomes can't afford to replace their potentially older, higher emitting vehicles with EVs. So I think whilst I'm happy for something to be developed on those lines, I do think the officers need to factor that in when they do the development. On the first part of the paper, I hope I've built a reputation amongst colleagues, particularly from the Conservative group, about always being willing to compromise and not getting angry. I am livid if you will vote for the suspension of these residence parking zones. I'm not willing to compromise on this, because people's lives are affected on a daily basis in my division, in Councillor Kavanagh's division, with the impact of half-finished schemes impacting on their quality of life and their ability to park, which might sound a relatively trivial thing, but believe me, when you have to drive around every night for hours to be able to park your vehicle, it is not a trivial thing, especially if you are a woman having to walk back at night alone, or possibly with a young child. It is a very, very serious impact. So I want to move an amendment to change recommendation A to say 3 rather than 4. It's clear why I'm doing that, and I really hope you could either abstain or vote for it, please. And I believe I have a seconder for that of Councillor Taylor.
Can I confirm, Councillor Taylor, you're seconding that amendment?
I am.
Okay.
But I have my hand up to speak as well.
Yeah. Yes. Please go ahead and speak now to the paper, please, not to the recommendation or the amendment.
Right. No, I should speak to the motion. This is a very important issue for the environment, but also about people's quality of life. Talking about my own division of Queen Edith, it's a subject that comes up time and time again. Parking is a huge problem. We have 3 sixth forms, 3 hospitals with Addenbrooke's, Packworth and the Rosie Hospital. And as those of you who've been to it know, the biomedical campus is set to expand in its numbers within the next 5 or 10 years. There is always a lot of parking. People use cars when they visit hospitals, as one of the speakers from Petersfield made abundantly clear. That doesn't change with COVID. If anything, it intensifies. So the reason that we need to see what COVID travel patterns are going to do to parking does not apply to areas near hospitals, because there's always parking there from people visiting the hospital or working at the hospital. There are 2 problems with this constant parking from people from outside the area and why we need residents parking. One is, as other people have said, is that residents can actually park their own cars near where they live, so they're not having to walk large distances. But there's also the effect of constant intensive parking from other people near where you live. I mean, I have people who live really near the hospital. They have their drives blocked, the entrance to their street blocked, so they can't get to their own properties. They have litter, the noise of people constantly coming and going, sometimes very early in the morning and late at night. And in the worst cases, abuse from people who are fighting over spaces in residential streets. What we end up with is people going for yellow lines because there's a block on the residents' parking. That's a blunt instrument. It doesn't allow people's own families and friends to park when they're visiting them. And actually, a residents' parking scheme has the ability to affect a much more balanced solution, so that there is some short stay parking or disabled parking as part of a scheme, whereas yellow lines means no parking for anybody. Now, Queen Edith was assured that the consultations for residents' parking would be next in the programme before the block was put on them. When the block was put on, people felt like that was a broken promise. I do think that if it's going to be blocked again by this committee, then people are just going to feel they're not being heard. The paper talks about the implications of localism. Well, this is localism when people vote for residents' parking and decide to do something to address the quality of life in their area, and just to ignore that means they're being completely ignored. So I would urge the committee to go for an option which does get the programme back on track for the sake of the quality of life of those residents who are having to deal with excessive parking.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howell, and then I think I will come in after that. Councillor Howell.
I'm just slightly lost here, Chairman. So I put together option 4, whether or not I get a seconder, but I want to know, can I just have a bit of clarity from Councillor Taylor and Manning? So would they be happy with option 4 at the moment? Because that's what I see is the way forward, but I can see a shake of a head and I'm not quite understanding here the issue.
So we're talking about, when we're talking about option 4, we're talking about recommendation A, presumably.
I think he's talking about the 4 options which are in the papers, and what I think Councillor Howell is saying is, if you look at option 4,
yeah,
okay, perhaps I'll come in at this particular point, Ian and Councillor Howell.
I'm talking about.
Are you aware that there is an extensive report which was actually issued yesterday by the Greater Cambridge Partnership after Councillor Kavanagh 3.5 hours of discussion? So the paper going to the GCP on the 18th was issued yesterday. There is considerable amount of options there. It's on item 7 on their papers. There is a lot of work about public transport. There's a lot of work about cycling. There's a lot of work about an integrated parking strategy, about on-street parking and off-street parking. So the number of car parks in the centre of Cambridge, which are still open and still being used. So I think the Greater Cambridge Partnership have actually yesterday issued their papers. I hope perhaps not all of you have seen them yet, but that actually links in quite distinctly into option 4 and to why that is being suggested. It's an integrated programme which the Greater Cambridge Partnership would lead on in having an integrated parking strategy. At the moment, instead of having residence parking, about what goes into a car park, what goes into the park and ride, etc. So it would all be covered, and I think there is a timeline there. So I'm very happy to support Councillor Howes and second Councillor Howes that we go forward with option 4.
Chairman, can I just come in? Yes, to answer Councillor Mann's question, yes. It's option A I'm looking at because I now know there's more funding available, and I was referring to paragraph 2.2. That's the paragraph I was at.
To answer Councillor Howell, no, I'm not happy with option 4, which is why I'm amending A to say option 3. And to answer your point, Councillor Bates, that isn't relevant because when I went to the GCP Assembly and got the confirmation from Peter Bates that this got the confirmation from Peter Bates, this money is still intended to bring in resident parking zones. So if you're essentially option 3 is agreeing with what the GCP is saying, option 4 is saying defer residence parking zones.
Have you seen the paper which was issued yesterday by the Greater Cambridge Partnership, Ian?
No, Chair, I haven't. As I say, it's irrelevant because
well, it's not relevant as far as I'm concerned,
Chair, because option 3 is the budget is still allocated to residence parking, not anything else. Within the
We are here to vote on the matter before us at this committee, not on papers that none of us have been sent. You can't possibly be expected to make a decision.
I think the simple way to deal with this is to go to a vote. So, would you like to read out what your amendment would be, Ian,
so
please?
It's merely in option A replacing the digit 4 with 3.
Okay.
So it would read, A would read, consider the 4 options outlined in part 1 of this report and in line with officer's recommendation. Well,
yep.
Probably need to strike that, don't you? So you probably needs to read, consider the 4 options outlined in part 1 of this report and approve option 3 is the most appropriate way forward.
Okay.
I would like to second that.
Okay, fine. Does any other member wish to debate that amendment, please, before I go to the vote? Okay, I will therefore go to the vote and I'll call you out individually as I go through. Councillor Connor.
You're on mute, David.
Sorry, Chairman. On the amendment, no.
Okay, Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Giles.
I will support the local members for.
Councillor Hartford. Councillor Hartford.
I'm assuming that Councillor Hartford is no longer in the meeting.
She is. Looking to me. I'll move on. I'll come back. Councillor Howell.
I'm against.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Support.
Councillor King.
Against.
Councillor Manning.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Myself against. I'll go back to Councillor Hartford. Councillor Hartford. I still see that she's present on my screen. Dan, has she left the meet? Has she left the meeting?
It doesn't appear that she's left the meeting, Chair.
Okay.
She's muted.
She's muted. So, Councillor Hartford, we are waiting for your vote, please.
Would you like me to ring a chair?
Yes, please.
I already am ringing Councillor Hartford.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll just wait a few moments for Councillor Hartford to cast her vote on the amendment as proposed by Councillor Manning and seconded by Councillor Taylor.
Chairman, with your permission, Councillor Hartford is. I'm just going to make a couple of phone calls, so I might just go blank, but I will be in the room.
Chair, just on a point of order, could we have the Democratic Services Officers just advise us what the protocol says about how long we can wait to contact a member?
Okay.
please.
Dan? Is there any, I think about the constitution?
There's no specified time. However, it would be for the chair's discretion as to how long he's prepared to wait for a member.
If she's not probably very well, she may be a couple of minutes, mightn't she? One doesn't know why she's not about, as far as I'm concerned. I think chair should give his discretion and say 5 minutes, and I think that would be fair. And that, in the event of anything, really.
I'm prepared to exercise that. I'm looking at my
Chairman.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Councillor Harford has had to just have a move around the room, and she's having a little bit of difficulty at the moment. As some of us who are aware, Councillor Harford has recently had to had a small medical procedure, so she's just trying to sort herself out medically, and then she'll be there now straight as soon as she can.
And just to make it clear, Chair, I think we should absolutely be sensitive to that. And
yeah, thank you. I just think
I think all of us will be sensitive to the fact that we all have other things to think about.
Thank you, Councillor Harford has joined us.
That's what I alluded to, Chairman, but didn't want to say. So
okay, thank you. Apologies to members. We've now taken the vote, Linda, and we are now with you to cast your vote on the amendment as proposed by Ian Manning and seconded by Amanda Taylor. How would you wish to vote, please?
I find this really difficult, but I guess I vote I vote against the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Dan, could you please give us the result of that vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So that's 4 votes in favour and 6 against, therefore the amendment falls.
Okay, can we now go please to the actual amendment on the paper?
Not the amendment.
Sorry, thank you. Thank you, David. Can we go to A and B on the paper as proposed? I'm looking to anybody that wishes to not agree with that. I think it may be sensible to go to a vote on the actual papers amendment. Sorry, the actual papers recommendations A and B. Okay, so I will read out your names again, and we're looking to your approval of the options, which indicates option 4 within the papers.
I'm so sorry, Chairman. Councillor Taylor, which I think is a legacy hand, is put a hand up, and also Councillor Manning has just put his hand up.
yeah, Chair, just to ask that we take the 2 A and B separately, please.
Sorry, I don't understand why.
No,
because I don't want to be forced into having to vote against both, because one's simply asking for the officers to go and do some work. I wouldn't want to vote against the officers go and do some work. I do want to vote against the suggestion that we defer the schemes.
I'm personally content to accept both the recommendations en bloc.
Yeah.
If you wish to contradict that, you're most welcome to vote as you feel appropriate. So I'm going to take the recommendations of A and B as laid out on the papers, and I will now call out your names, please, to give a vote on that. So I'll start with Councillor Connor.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
4.
Councillor Giles.
4.
Councillor Hartford.
4.
Councillor Howell.
4.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Against.
Councillor King.
4.
Councillor Manning.
Against.
Councillor Taylor.
Against this second deferral.
You're either on. I took A and B together. Are you voting for? We're voting on A and B. What is your decision, please?
Against all of
Against. Thank you.
both the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. So the Democratic are cleared. Myself, I'm for. Can you please give us the result of that vote, please? Dan?
Thank you, Chair. That's 7 votes in favour, 3 against. Therefore, the recommendation is carried.
Thank you. I'd like to actually go back to the agenda, and thank you for bearing with us on that particular item. I think we're going back to item 11, which is local highways improvement, the members working.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a small suggestion? I appreciate at the beginning we have to keep our cameras on, but because some of us have been sitting for so long and we wish to get up and move around, may I ask your permission if we can just have the camera switched off? If I'm sure will still be listening to the agenda item, but have this camera switched off for 2 minutes for our own comfort if we wish to walk around the room.
Good idea.
Yes. Okay, I'm certainly content, and thank you for allowing my little walk out. Okay, I'm content for people to stand up and have a little walk around their rooms as appropriate. Let's be realistic. It's a long meeting. It's a long meeting. It becomes quite difficult after you've been sitting for a long time, particularly for those people in their mid-70s. That's a little hint there. So we're going to go to the members' paper on the local highways initiative, the report back from the members group.
I'm so sorry, Chairman, to interrupt you once again, but Councillor Manning is trying desperately to be very polite and interrupt you.
Oh, sorry. Apologies.
Obviously, the last item was a bit tense, and thank you for taking it in out of order. I do have to go now because I have to get back to my day job, so I will have to drop out of the meeting. Apologies.
Okay, I'm going to say something then, please, before you do go, Ian. Okay, and I'll go back. I would actually like, this is the last meeting of this committee in our term. So I would like to place on record my thanks to all members of all parties for their contribution over the last year, and particularly pay actually attention also to the officers that have supported this particular committee. So I'd like to pass on thanks to all of you for all your assistance and your help. We may disagree occasionally, okay? I think we've just demonstrated that, but that's called democracy. We would all support democracy, I know, and that actually is very important as we go forward. So a vote of thanks both for you, all members, and also for the officers that are supported. I was going to say that at the end, but I've now said it at halfway through.
Mr. Chairman, can I also thank you personally for being a very inclusive and a chairman who listens. So thank you for that very much, Ian.
Okay, thank you. Are we apologies, Ian? I'm sure we understand that people have day jobs as well as nighttime jobs, as they say. So thank you for that. And can we return, please, to the local highways initiative, which I think is going to be introduced by Gareth Guest.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The member working group met 5 times online via Teams. A number of processes were discussed and reviewed. And it is asked to approve the following recommendations: a revised application criteria which will align with the county corporate priorities, a maximum of 2 people to present per application at the LHI panel meetings, future LHI panels to comprise a maximum of 8 and a minimum of 6 county councillors drawn from the relevant district areas. The chair of the LHI panel is to be chosen from the elected LHI panel and agreed prior to the start of the panel meeting. And finally, it was asked to have a review to determine whether LHI panel meetings should be held online in future.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, I think you would like just to speak on this matter.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry to have a second bite of the cherry, but I'm most grateful to you. And also to be grateful to the working group, because I think we all work very hard, and I was a member of that group. I've got a couple of concerns about accuracy. The first one, I think, is about the proposal that we made that officers might chair as a way of ensuring consistency. I can see that decision has been changed now to having a member chairing, and I can see the logic of that because members are elected and therefore you're electing a chair. But the issue was very much about consistency, and there was a concern that actually consistency was not apparent in some of the panels, and a concern that members were not briefed. So I would just draw people's attention to the FAQs, which we put together as a group, because they are really important, because the message there is about people actually preparing for this as a serious process rather than just wandering in, giving their view and wandering off again. So that's one issue. The second issue I think is much more serious, which is there was agreement in the working group that in Cambridge City, a minority of city councillors should be able to be on the LHI panel. But this isn't reported accurately in the report. It states members into paragraph 2(5)(d), it says members were asked to allow city councillors to be present. And we didn't ask that it happened. We actually agreed that it should happen, which is actually rather different. If you look at the recommendation actually overrides that. The recommendation says LHI panels to comprise a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 8 county councillors from divisions within the relevant district areas. So although the working group was agreeing that we should allow a minority of city councillors on, the final recommendation does not say that, and there's no rationale for the change. I'd like to propose that actually we should go back, and I'd like to, I don't know if it's possible to do so as a visiting member, but I'd like to propose an amendment, which is to add.
Linda, Linda, you're not a member of the committee, so you can't
No,
propose
that's
an
right.
amendment.
I didn't think I could. Well,
No, no,
can I ask maybe that somebody else would like to propose to add to a recommendation 3, and for the Cambridge City panel to include a minority of city councillors.
Okay, I think we've got two other members on the committee. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much. The reason for doing this is because county councillors would still be in the majority. It wouldn't change that. But the city, because it has a whole range of LHIs coming in each year, does make a very significant financial contribution. And so it's partly about that, but it's also about the fact that the city is a resource for the whole county. And therefore, I think the opportunity to treat it in this way, to treat it fairly, particularly as that had been agreed by the group, is something that we ought in principle to stand by.
Okay, I understood, Linda. I don't agree with you, I have to say, at all, to be honest with you.
So that's when it was changed.
I'm going to actually move on to Councillor Hartford and then Councillor King. Please, Linda.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I support what Councillor Jones has just asked for. We certainly did agree that the city was had unique circumstances, and that there should be the opportunity for some sort of representation from city councillors on the panels. So I would like to propose that we reword that particular section so that it reflects that. If there is a seconder, I'm fairly sure that Councillor King was also a member of the LHI working group, and hopefully he will second that for me. With regard to her comment about the chairing and the consistency, I have to say that she is right, but I am prepared to cede our position on that, providing there is consistency in the attendance of the officer at panels. So there still needs to be an officer, and I would request that wherever possible, it is the same officer that attends all panels. Whether or not he or she is elected as chairman at the meeting is by the by, as far as I'm concerned. We do need the consistency of an officer present, please. Thank you.
Okay. So Simon King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we had some lively discussions, and that was a good thing, I suppose. I think that the way I look at this is it's a work in progress, and there's no reason why we shouldn't visit LHIs at a future date during the next council. I'm quite happy to support what Councillor Evans is suggesting. So if Councillor Harford's proposing that, I'm prepared to second it. But I would like to make one other change to that number 3. And I'm concerned about this minimum of 6. And I would like to propose that we change that to a minimum of 5. I have spoken to Councillor Harford. She's in agreement with that, because I remember from my own experience in Fenland, we've very rarely had more than 5 councillors being present. So I would like to propose that change, and also second the change that Councillor Harford has proposed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let a few more speakers speak. Amanda Taylor, have you got your hand up, or is that a legacy?
No, I was going to offer to put an amendment into the effect that city councillors be included in the panel, but it's been done by others.
Okay. Councillor Kavanagh then. Thank you for that. Councillor Kavanagh.
Oh yeah, I was just going to second the proposal to have city councillors represented. But the other thing I'd like to say is the Working Party has to be applauded for the speed at which they worked and got this report together. It must be one of the fastest working parties that's ever been put together in the 8 years I've been a councillor. I mean, I'm on the HGV one, and we seem to be given more of an open-ended deadline, like a year. So I think the outcome is to be commended. It's a very rational document. I think there's just this small part to be addressed. We need the city councillors present for the reasons that Councillor Jones and Hartford said. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this item? I think what we're suggesting is number 3 to change 6 to 5. And then I think we're also looking to amend the issue related to Cambridge City. Perhaps somebody could help with some of the words. I think Linda.
Yes.
Okay, please, because I'm not quite clear where that would fit in, but it could fit in somewhere, I'm sure.
I think the important thing is for it to state that panel membership in respect of Cambridge City, due to its unique circumstances, should include a minority contribution or minority membership of city councillors.
Okay. Members, we've got the amendment. I think it would be sensible to see if there is any dissension from that, or can I take that on block with that amendment?
Happy to agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
I see no dissension on that. Therefore, that has been duly seconded and proposed and seconded, and is duly passed. I think, Dan, you've captured that words. Thank you. Members, I'm very conscious of the fact we are getting very short of time and we will be cut off shortly. So can I move to Highways Verge Maintenance, which I think is the last item, which is item 12 on your hymn sheets. Thank you. Highways number 12, Highways Maintenance Verge. I think that's Jonathan Clark. Jonathan, could you please introduce it? Please bear in mind the time that we have left.
Yeah, certainly. Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I'll keep it very brief. A workshop was held last year with some key stakeholders, a couple of the country's experts, Dr. Phil Sterling and Dr. Kate Petty. That workshop led to a number of some development in the paper in front of you, and in summary, it looks at how we can improve the county's protected road verges. It looks to change the rural cut of the network, i.e. the timing of the cut and the width of the cut of the verge. It also looks at work in the urban area, where we're proposing to do some trials with parishes on a cut and collect to encourage biodiversity there. We're mindful of road safety, and that's very important to us. So we've mapped all the bends and all the junctions and we're proposing to do a minimum of 4 cuts of those areas a year, and then a very large piece of work with the community where we're supporting, encouraging, trying to make it really happen for any community, parish or whoever who wants to manage their verges in a different way in the county. We're going to work with them and hopefully make it happen for them. So that's very briefly what the paper's about. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping it brief, John. I think the word flexibility comes to mind here. Okay, so Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, many of us received an email expressing concern about the reduction to 2 cuts. I'm particularly concerned about the impact that might have on footpaths and also upon rights of way. Will those be affected by this proposal?
Okay, I'll pick up 2 more comments, John, and then come back to you. So, Noel Kavanagh. Noel.
2 quick questions. Before the grass is cut, is rubbish cleared off the verges, particularly plastic? I mean, there's been national reports about plastic being churned up in the cutting and then finding its way into the soil, which is not a good thing. And the second question is that verges, particularly in the city, I mean, in our experience here as city councillors, and I'm sure you have it in the market towns, anarchic parking, as I would call it, destroys verges. I mean, does it add to your costs having to repair verges, and then also in some instances have to fit plastic meshing in, all to compensate for what I would call anarchic parking, irresponsible parking on our verges, which are there to enhance our community. And I don't want to rub it in, but that's one of the reasons why we find residence parking schemes a great benefit. It causes vehicles to park responsibly in bays and not on verges. Thanks.
Okay. Linda Hartford, Councillor Hartford.
Just very quickly, I'd like to thank John Clark for this report because it's something I've supported all the way along. I think this is an excellent report. I understand Councillor King's need to have those questions addressed, but other than that, I utterly support the ambitions of this report and thank officers for all the work that they've done, particularly Mr. Clark. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Giles, and then I'm going to actually ask John, and then we'll go to the vote, members. Councillor Giles. Please be quick.
Councillor Giles, you're on mute.
I know. I was trying to get my... Yeah, yeah, very good report. My only slight concern, and it's already been mentioned by Noel, that 2 cuts in the countryside, on the countryside verges, should be okay, and we should be able to deal with that, and we should be able to manage that. It's when we get the so-called county council verges going through the villages, etc. 2 cuts are not necessarily enough for that, and as long as there can be some cooperation between the parish councils for an extra cut or 3, and I think that will be a good step forward.
Okay. Ryan, Councillor Fuller, you can have the privilege, I think, as being the last speaker of this committee.
It's okay, Chairman. I lowered my hand.
Oh, okay, fine. Back to Sol. Well, that's spoiled that little comment. John Clark, can I please address some of the issues which relates to plastic cuts, and where the divide line is between villages and towns and the like? John, please.
One of the first questions was about rights of way. So this paper doesn't involve any of the maintenance or the vegetation cuts on rights of way. So there's no proposals at the present to change that. The question about the litter, so we work closely with our district partners, sharing our programme programs.
You going down? Sorry.
Sorry. So we work closely with our district councils and we share our programs with them. But you are quite right. When you cut grass, you will see whatever rubbish is in there. It is going to. It will be increased in number, but decreased in size. But that's ongoing work with our district colleagues. Regarding verges being damaged particularly in Cambridge City, or irresponsible parking. I think as much as we get irresponsible parking in the cities, probably in the county-wide areas, we may get more agricultural damage of verges. It's an ongoing issue and something where we can protect it and it's affordable to do so, we will. Otherwise, it's just something I'm afraid we just have to learn to live with in some areas. And then the villages, we spoke about the number of cuts. In the villages, it is budgeted for 3 cuts. But what we're trying to move away from is not referring to this as grass cutting, but referring to it as verge management. So it's a change in mindset, and it's allowing people to, if they want wildflowers in their local area, then that's what will enable them to achieve. And if that's not what they want, then there's the flexibility for them to achieve something else. So it's really working with and encouraging those so everybody, as much as possible, gets the outcome that they're looking for.
Thank you. I've got no other speakers. We have got the 2 recommendations as laid out on the paper. I'm looking to see if there's any dissent from that recommendation. I see no dissent, therefore that is concluded and endorsed by all members present at the moment. So it's passed. Can we move on, please, to the last item, which I think is Dan, which is the agenda and forward plan, etc. Dan, is there anything you wish to add to the report?
Just a couple of things that have come up in committee today, and that's the adoption of Councillor Manning's proposed amendment that was agreed to be deferred, and then the A14 issues, which will include an invite to high.
Okay. Thank you. Simon, is that a legacy hand, please, or?
No, it isn't, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to pick up a couple of other things that we talked about today, which is the agenda item 10, the infrastructure project delivery. We did agree that we would bring that back in a year to see how it's going. And we also did agree that we would have regular reports on how projects were going in terms of delivery. So I would just like to ask Dan to factor that into the agenda plan, please.
Okay, thank you. Noted. I have no other speakers on that. I think that now concludes the meeting of today, and thank you for your time and diligence. It is now 10 to 2.
Next meeting.
So the committee is finished. So thank you for your time, and hope you all have a nice afternoon in this sunny weather. Goodbye all.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.